but McConnell still has leverage. And that, I think, political capital, especially in this particular political moment, is of vital importance.
Where does that leave the Speaker of the House who wants to lead the next effort?
I think I said this before, and I'll say it again. I think that she's done a remarkable job in terms of keeping her party united. But that said, I mean, Leader McConnell has been in power for quite some time. I would never count out McConnell or Pelosi. Pelosi is someone who grabbed the gavel back again. But traditionally, the shelf life of the Speaker of the House is fewer years rather, than that of the Majority Leader.
Mr. Cirilli. Great to catch up with you as always. Kevin Cirilli from down in Washington, D.C. Leader Cirilli on the road ahead, Tom, as the House and Senate get back to business May 4th.
We know we got 42 listeners coast to coast, okay? And if you take out the girlfriends, wives, and ex-wives, we're down to 12.
Here we go.
Okay, I've had 10 of those 12 people. People say, this is absolute garbage. Where is the check so I can survive? John, it's the polar opposite of what I hear from your United Kingdom.
There's a better way of starting this conversation, but let's run with it anyway. To this point, I think this market is trading on the optics of some of these programs and less on whether they have been effective or not. And I think we need to think about the efficacy of them. How well have they hit their targets? I've been encouraged by how quickly this money has been distributed to businesses. I've been less than encouraged over small businesses fighting large businesses for the same pool of funds. And I think that's a problem we'll have to deal with coming out the other side.
Absolutely. Got a check?
No,
that's
honestly,
the problem, Tom.
But there's another issue here, too, and this is emerging as another controversy, which is more than half of workers who have been laid off are receiving more in weekly payouts from governments than they had in their wages. So some business owners are saying it's hard to entice them back to their businesses in order for them to apply for the PPP loans because they have to have them on their payroll. So this is an extra sort of edge to this that's making it harder for some of the smaller businesses to get back up and running and get the money.
The unintended consequences on several fronts will be a topic of conversation, no doubt, over the next several weeks and several months on this program. Counting it down to the market open 2 hours away in New York City. Equity futures up at 35, called it 36. We're positive 1.24% from New York. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing, LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Caterpillar report.
If you want to do something important, work in adult social care.
I'm Georgia. I love social care because you never know what each day will bring. The thing that I would say to anybody that was thinking about a job in social care is go for it.
We are recruiting in your local area. We need you now, and they need you always. Care for others, Make a difference. Today. Search adult social care jobs now.
Okay, people, I've got the daily checklist. Who today has eaten dinner for breakfast? Tick. Started a chore you'll never finish? Tick. Done a conference call in your pajamas? Tick. Here's another for your list. BritBox. Streaming the BBC, ITV, Channel 5 and now Channel 4. All in one place and ad-free. So add BritBox to your list and get a 30-day free trial of the biggest box of British box sets. Search BritBox free trial. Tick. Biggest compared to other SVOD providers. Auto-renews at $5.99 a month unless cancelled. T's and C's apply.
Introducing the new single, Impossible. From Central American rock and blues trio, Steady Rolling. Their epic story of love and loss continues. Download and stream the single, Impossible, from the band Steady Rolling, wherever good music lives.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks to National Lottery players, communities across the country are about to benefit from up to £300 million of funding.
Thank you. Thank you.
Money that will help support the most vulnerable in these exceptional times.
Thank you. Thank you.
Food banks, local health organisations, charities combating loneliness, and thousands of other community causes will all get vital resources.
Thank you. Thank you.
And it's all thanks to you, playing the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen.
Casting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
From New York City, this is Bloomberg Surveillance for our audience worldwide. We're live on Bloomberg Radio, 2 hours away from the opening bout. The S&P 500 up nicely, up a little more than 1% and through 2,900, positive 37 points on a session. In the bond market, yields basically unchanged at 0.66% on a US 10-year. In foreign exchange, a quick snapshot of G10 for you. A dollar weaker against everything, against the majors. The euro advancing around about 0.5%. The attention once again on the crude market. Bring up the contract table. The pressure is on the June contract. The June contract is negative. July, August, September, October, November, December, all positive this morning, Tom. The story, the indexes, the ETFs rolling out of June, selling the June contract and going into July and beyond.
Before we bring in our esteemed guest, and she is really, really good at this, folks, please stay with us, Global Wall Street. John, I really want to parse landlocked or perceived landlocked Oklahoma American oil with those contracts you're talking about versus the floating global price Brent crude. John, I want you to explain how West Texas really doesn't exist in London, and that London, LME, all the commodity heritage of London is all about Brent, isn't it?
Well, landlock's the clue there, Tom, which is why they're two completely different oil markets. One is landlocked, the other can float in the ocean in big, big tankers, and that's why we have an $8-9 spread right now between WTI and Brent. The idea being that there is more places you can put Brent than there are where you can put WTI. Though I have to say, Brent is under its own pressure when it comes to storage too.
No question. We saw that this morning. We'll get to this. And, of course, Lisa's got some smart work here on the credit market in hydrocarbons as well. Right now, Amrita Sen joins us, Energy Aspects. She's wonderful on these dynamics. Amrita, if you were to publish this morning, what would you publish on the dynamics, the micro theory of demand in oil?
I think, demand April is going to be the worst month for demand we've seen probably ever for the oil market. But the good news is that we are going to come out of this, and you are starting to see social distancing measures ease in parts of Europe and the US. So it should get better from here.
Amrita, can we just get your thoughts on what is happening with some of the indexing around the crude market, and whether you think we've seen a total failure of some of these products to actually track the oil market? Because what I'm seeing on the screens today is just a big distortion because of what's happening with a single ETF.
Yes, and we've seen this in 2008 as well. This is not the first time, and back then the WTI contango widened out to $8, which is precisely why we had said for this year, as soon as the demand had collapsed and we could see these fund flows coming in, because a lot of retail investors think this is a good time to go long oil because it's quote unquote cheap. But then they don't realize the contango and the amount of money they're losing rolling every month. And of course, now everybody's aware of these ETFs and everybody pre-positions. And this is going to be with us for a few more months. The good thing is, USO, for instance, came out yesterday and said they're distributing the positions all the way through June 2021. So they are taking some action, but there's just way too much retail length at the front.
Rita, I'm struggling to understand why the July WTI contract is more than $18 a barrel, given the fact that we're going to face the same issue come next month. What's going to change?
First and foremost, they are trying to distribute it. So, even for the May contract, for instance, 100% of their positions were there in May, whereas now they're distributing it. So it's more like 20%, and then they're distributing a further 20% down the curve and all the way through to June 2021. So the pressure will be less, even though there will be some pressure. Also, some of the ETFs have been forced to close out. A lot of the Bank of China products, for instance, that lost billions of dollars because of the WTI move to negative territory, they're no longer allowed to trade. So I think that helps. But also by July, physical fundamentals will be a lot better. Supplies have started to turn lower. Demand is starting to turn higher. We should start to see draws from June onwards. Of course, it doesn't mean we are anywhere close to rebalancing. That's going to take years. But at least we're moving in the right direction.
I guess I'm struggling to understand the idea of hope that continues in the oil markets, sort of idea, the hope that the supply-demand dynamic will get better and that oil prices will stabilize higher. Fitch Ratings put out a prediction yesterday saying that high-yield energy bond and loan defaults, that the rate will increase to 17% and 18% respectively with respect to bonds and loans. And this presumed nearly $30 a barrel type of pricing. Is this lowballing the potential defaults given where we are?
I would agree, and I think that's exactly why I don't think it's a hope in terms of the rebalancing. I think, we've been bearish all the way through. Even with the OPEC Plus cuts, we didn't think that would have been enough. But now we do see supplies are finally turning and turning faster, just as demand is going to start to recover again. No one is saying we're going to be in balance for a good 18 months to 2 years, but we are starting to see millions of barrels per day of production being shut in the U.S. Bankruptcies, as to your point, will be a lot higher than some of these estimates, because right now there's very few, if any, producers that are making any money at these prices.
And Rita, let's get out to 2021, early 2022. Talk to me about what that environment looks like off the back of a price shock that happened 18 months ago.
I think back end of 21 into 22 it gets very interesting, because it's not just the supply losses that we are finally starting to see now. It's also the potentially semi-permanent losses to reservoirs that we see because of the shutdowns of the scale that we are going to see in the coming weeks. We've never seen this before. No country other than Saudi Arabia will probably come out of this unscathed, in the sense that they will lose some production on a permanent basis.
Okay, I want to know what the nations do, Amrita. I mean, this is all great, and you are so expert at supply, demand, et cetera, et cetera. They can't sustain Brent 20, Brent 24, Brent 28, whatever, versus their structure of fiscal and social demands. Which countries are you most following, not for the drama of collapse, but that just are going to be hugely challenged?
Nigeria, Iraq would be the two top ones for us. And yes, there's a lot written in the press about Saudi Arabia and Russia, but again, they do have reserves. They can get out and even raise capital if there need be, but they are at least better prepared. But for us, Nigeria, Russia for sure, and then Nigeria and Iraq for sure. And then, of course, there are a lot of the Latin American countries which we believe are very vulnerable to these prices.
Amrita, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much. Amrita Sen with us, and of course with the energy aspects, just extraordinary this morning. John, I want to get this in. I think it's so important, and that is Brazil is a tinderbox this morning. It's not, is it energy? Yeah, I guess it's energy. It's somewhat tangential to what Ms. Sen was talking about, but with the real out 5.66, I mean, Brazil is just extraordinarily interesting right now.
Tom, there have been massive questions that have been asked about the leadership of Bolsonaro in the last several months. I would say that has got even more intense over the last several weeks.
I mean, I know it's a Damien Sassar world, folks, but I urge you to read in a little bit on Brazil, moving from idiosyncratic to maybe something more general. The Bloomberg NJIT STEM report brought to you by New Jersey Institute of Technology, offering an MBA that provides STEM professionals with a technology-focused experience. Learn more at njit.edu/MBA. Here's Bob Moon.
Tom, Jonathan, Lisa, good morning. Here's what's making news in science, technology, engineering, and math. As many as 250,000 guest workers seeking a green card in the U.S., about 200,000 of them on H-1B visas, could lose their legal status by the end of June, according to immigration experts. As many as 3/4 of H-1B visas go to people working in the technology industry. H-1B visas are tied to a specific location and employer who commits to paying the recipient a minimum salary, furloughing recipients, reducing their wages, and in some cases, just allowing them to work from home can violate visa requirements. Families that rely on those jobs for authorization to stay in the U.S. can include children who may have spent their entire lives here. One expert says the visa crisis is causing a catastrophe at a human and economic level. Lobbying group TechNet, whose members include Apple, Amazon, Facebook, Google, and Microsoft, is part of a coalition of trade groups calling for relief for foreign-born workers. Have you noticed you're not seeing as many ads as you used to while surfing the internet these days? Over the past few months, there's been a noticeable drop in demand for digital advertising, and it comes after a decade of explosive growth in that segment of the economy. Like many of the economic effects of the coronavirus, it's anyone's guess when the trend might turn positive again. Two of the biggest online ad getters, Facebook and Google, may find themselves having to contend for the first time ever with shrinking revenues. That's the Bloomberg NJIT STEM report. Tom, Lisa, John.
Bob Moon, thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Let's get some news, some headlines worldwide. Here's Michael Barr.
Thank you, John. Lisa, Tom. The White House issued a strategy to expand U.S. testing for the coronavirus, accelerating President Donald Trump's push to reopen the economy. The new guidance will help states build testing capacity developed with the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and the Food and Drug Administration.
We are continuing to rapidly expand our capacity and confident that we have enough testing to begin reopening and the reopening process. We want to get our country open, and the testing is not going to be a problem at all.
Meanwhile, retailers, including Walmart and CVS, say they would open hundreds of new sites to provide tests. In the UK, the lockdown is helping to slow deaths from coronavirus. That's according to the government, which is urging residents to continue to stay at home. Bloomberg's Leanne Gerrans has more from London.
Scientists are drawing up options for easing movement restrictions, which are expected to be set out later this week. That's as the government plans safe ways to reboot the battered economy. Chancellor Rishi Sunak is mulling how to gradually unwind support for businesses. Chief Medical Officer Chris Whitty is warning the coming months are fraught with uncertainty. In London, I'm Leanne Gerrans, Bloomberg Radio.
South Korean top officials say North Korea leader Kim Jong-un's absence from the public view may be in line with fears of the coronavirus. Pyongyang has scaled down major events, and Seoul is confident that there are no unusual signs regarding Kim's health. Meanwhile, President Trump says that he has a very good idea about Kim's condition, but would not elaborate. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. John, Lisa, Tom.
Michael Barr, thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Everybody being very delicate about what they do and do not know about the story in North Korea. And I would say, Tom, for very good reason as well. I'm not sure anyone wants to get out ahead of that one before finding out exactly what is going on.
I give great credit to Bloomberg. I think Bloomberg really showed some editorial leadership over the weekend, John, of just sifting out the speculation and the rumor from like Okay, what does anybody actually know?
A lot of speculation, a lot of rumour, not many headlines and not many hard stories to go on at the moment. Tom, you mentioned the FX market. Let's pick up there. Weaker dollar story through G10, weaker dollar story through EM, led by the South African rand improving, the Mexican peso as well. But you mentioned Brazil, and I think it's worth reflecting on how big some of these FX moves have been through 2020. We have had a 40% move, weaker Brazilian currency against the US dollar, 40%, Tom. That is huge.
And Lisa, what's so important here, even with Turkey and the reserve drawdown they're having and the shocks, they just pick up the swaps on dollar where the Central Bank of the United States ends up being a proxy for their stability.
Yeah, Brazil is fighting a lot of different shocks, right? The oil shock, the commodity shock, and then it also has a political crisis on its hands. Just to give you a sense, though, Brazil does have a huge chest of currency reserves, and they have sold about $19 billion of reserves just in March, selling dollars to try to support their currency. And they have a lot more, but there's a question about how much they're willing to deploy at a time when they really need the money.
A question we can discuss a little bit later with Steve Englander, hopefully, of Standard Chartered. He'll be joining this program. In the equity market, here's the story for you. Nicely through 2,900 on the S&P 500. Futures, positive 35 points and up by 1.2%. From New York, this is Bloomberg Radio.
With the Bloomberg Business of Sports Report, I'm Michael Barr. The NBA plans to reopen team practice facilities Friday in areas where local governments have relaxed stay-at-home restrictions amid the coronavirus pandemic. That's according to an ESPN report. Dallas Mavericks team owner Mark Cuban says playing without fans is a made-for-TV event.
I mean, we're dying for content. We're dying for teams to root for. We're dying to get excited about games and just just ready to go and cheer as a community. And so, yes, I really think that if we're able to pull it off without fans, we're certainly going to do it.
Major League Baseball games this year with no fans in the stands, that could be on deck, according to New York Governor Andrew Cuomo.
Be creative, try to figure it out. But if players could get paid more than staying home, and owners would get some revenue versus total shutdown, why not?
That is a Bloomberg Business of Sports report. I'm Michael Barr.
Vatsal Shah is Senior Project Engineer at Mott MacDonald, a global engineering consultancy with more than 16,000 employees. He earned his PhD at New Jersey Institute of Technology, and as an adjunct professor is helping NJIT students explore emerging technologies.
My focus is renewable markets, emerging technologies, the idea of floating cities. What are we doing to develop that? What will happen to the city on the water? Well, you're going to have waves hitting it. You're going to have solar. How are you going to develop plants? How are you going to develop vegetation and farming? That sort of thought process happens at NJIT. We actually plan out what will the city look like. How do we develop that? So in 10 years, we're actually ready to take on those challenges when we have our first development in the water. NJIT also has been doing a lot of work in self-healing materials, so taking the polymers and the new material that we have in our material sciences departments and putting them into things like concrete, things like steel, reinforcing our soil.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Global News 24.
If you want to do something important, work in adult social care.
I'm Greg and I lead the team at a residential care home. Supporting people to live life to the fullest, it's an amazing job to have.
We are recruiting in your local area. We need you now, and they need you always. Care for others, make a difference. Today. Search adult social care jobs now.
Okay, people, I've got the daily checklist. Who today has eaten dinner for breakfast? Tick. Started a chore you'll never finish? Tick. Done a conference call in your pajamas? Tick. Here's another for your list. BritBox. Streaming the BBC, ITV, Channel 5 and now Channel 4. All in one place and ad-free. So add BritBox to your list and get a 30-day free trial of the biggest box of British box sets. Search BritBox free trial. Tick. Biggest compared to other SVOD providers. Auto-renews at $5.99 a month unless cancelled. T's and C's apply.
We're all having to get used to the new normal. And at Birkbeck University, we're experts at being adaptable. As London's evening university, we've been flexing around the lives of busy commuters for nearly 200 years. And you can find everything you need to secure your place for autumn online. From expert advice to virtual tours, a live chat with our students and course applications. Make the new normal studying for the career that you really want. Search Birkbeck and it's new problem solved.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow, and futures are higher. NYMEX crude oil falling. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures up 34 points. Dow futures up 317. NASDAQ futures up 94. 10-year Treasury up 230 seconds. Yield 0.65%. Yield on the 2-year 0.21%. NYMEX crude oil is down almost 16%, down $2.01 at $10.76 a barrel. COMEX gold is little changed, up $1.20 at $17.25 an ounce. The euro 1.0886 against the dollar. The yen 106.62, and that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom, John, and Lisa.
Karen, thank you. Thank you very much. The hope very much on the reopening of the economy, Tom. Governor Andrew Cuomo said there could be a case for reopening some regions of New York, at least, in May.
It is the Empire State, folks, and we have been thrilled to speak often on Bloomberg Surveillance with the Lieutenant Governor of the Empire State. Kathy Hochul joins us. Kathy, I picked up the Daily News this morning, and I just wanted to see it there. You know, New York dropped dead. I mean, that's, again, the tone 45 years on in Washington. The president saying to New York, drop dead. Explain to our audience, coast to coast, how New York contributes to the federal pot of money.
New York State, our residents contribute $29 billion more to the federal government to fund their operations more than we get back in services. And I am elected official now. I was formerly an attorney on the staff of Daniel Patrick Moynihan back in the 1980s. And he released this report every single year to show how New Yorkers subsidized the rest of the nation and therefore made an argument that we should be able to get more money coming back to us. But now more than ever, you think about the fact that we have been the epicenter of this pandemic. We have had to incur more costs. We've had to, our businesses are hurting. And the federal government should look at that record, realize that states like Kentucky take more money than they put in, and we give more money. And so why are we even having this conversation? Give us the money now. We need your help.
Okay, to John Farrell's good question there on testing and where we are, where it's every state for himself. I'm looking out, Lieutenant Governor, on 2% of New York State people jogging around Central Park. I mean, 2% are going to get tested? That seems absurd.
Well, we want those testing rates to be much higher, and that's why when President Trump met with Governor Cuomo just exactly a week ago today, our governor made a very compelling case to say, okay, you say you don't want to have anything to do with testing. How about if we split it? New York State will run the testing. We'll do the collection sites. We'll gather the samples. We'll get out the results. But we don't have the components to do that testing. We don't have access to the international supply chain where reagents and vials and swabs are being manufactured in places like China. Can you help us, federal government, at least have a supply chain and a repository to send to states like New York so we can ramp up from 20,000 tests a day to over 40,000. That's exactly what we're striving for. So we can do better. We just don't have the reagents and other components to be able to do it. We want to do it. Absolutely. We think it's going to make a huge difference in people's sense of security as we start reopening the economy.
Lieutenant Governor, just fast forwarding beyond the testing and reopening, I'm wondering about the fate of New York City as a metropolitan center. I've read an increasing number of stories about businesses rethinking plans to open offices in the city and the possible exodus of families moving to the suburbs and beyond. How realistic is that? How big of a threat? How often do you talk about that?
We have been down and out before in New York City. You think about 9/11. And at the time, people said, why would any tourists ever come back here? Clearly, we were a terrorist target. Why would anyone want to live in Manhattan? We came back stronger, better, more vibrant than ever before. Hurricane Sandy wiped out, flooded the New York City subway system, creating and, wreaking havoc throughout Long Island. We know how to rebuild and rebuild stronger with more resiliency. Yeah. So I believe that what we're tasked with right now is to reimagine a better New York City, a better New York State, and I'm involved with that with the governor as we speak.
And then Lieutenant Governor John Farrell moved here, top of the market.
Tom, really, isn't that your input this morning after that serious suggestion from Kathy? Kathy, let me follow up on something important, please. How do you reopen in New York City if you're not aligned with New Jersey and neighboring states?
Good question.
We will be aligned. No, absolutely. This is something the governor initiated with our neighboring governors over a month ago. This tri-state coalition that expanded to 7 states, where we don't want to do anything at odds with another neighboring state because there's so much synergy in that tri-state area in particular. People live in New Jersey, they work in New York, and vice versa. Same with Connecticut. So the governors have really been enlightened. I mean, this has not happened before, but it's been this incredible collaboration where we talk about the fact that if beaches open in one area, should they be open elsewhere? What about schools? What about transportation systems? What about opening up businesses? So I think New Yorkers and people living in that region should feel with confidence that there'll be intense coordination among our administrations to make sure that we're not working in cross purposes from each other. That doesn't accomplish anything. You open up the bars in Newark and not in New York City, people are going to go to Newark. I mean, let's understand human nature, and that just expands the spread if New York City is not ready to open. So that's why it's really important what they're doing, and that'll make the difference.
Well, I'm listening to what both states are saying at the moment, and Governor Cuomo's been quite clear about slowly looking at reopening some regions in New York in May. Governor Murphy of New Jersey essentially saying flat out that the stay-at-home order will remain in effect in its entirety until further notice. Are you saying there's no daylight between the two governors at the moment, Kathy?
I'm talking about regionally. New Jersey is in close proximity to New York City, the metropolitan area, which is not ready to open yet. And the governor talks about opening regionally. He's talking about something like Erie County, an area like Erie County, western New York, which is literally a 7-hour drive from New York City. So no one from New York City is going to hop into a facility and visit Erie County. It's just geographically doesn't make sense. So we're talking about the far reaches of the state that really have a dramatically lower number of positive cases, hospitalizations, and are more prepared to open up. And that's what I'm focusing on now as we speak. My focus designated by the governor a week ago when he came to Buffalo was to chart a reopening plan for the outside downstate areas, upstate New York and central New York, on a different timetable altogether.
Well, it is the Empire State. Lieutenant Governor, thank you so much for joining Bloomberg Surveillance this morning. John?
Great to catch up with the Lieutenant Governor on a regular basis to get the update on the reopening in New York. Let's get you some price action, shall we? Equity futures shaping up as follows this Tuesday morning. Equity futures advance 36 points, nicely through 2,900. We're up by 1.25% on the S&P 500, despite the fact the guidance from the companies on the S&P 500, but let's be clear, there isn't much of any guidance at all. UPS pulling theirs. We've seen the likes of 3M, Xerox, PepsiCo do the same thing so far this morning. No guidance is the new guidance for the S&P 500. Very little clarity about the path ahead. The hope of things is driving this market a little bit more higher. In the bond market, yields down just a single basis point on a 10-year to 0.65% in foreign exchange. Weaker dollar against G10 and against the bulk of emerging markets as well. The focus for many of you, I'm sure, on the commodity market. Crude down another 17% on the June contract. WTI $10.60 from New York. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Live on Bloomberg Radio.
Not completing high school is more of a social.
Coming soon, Ricochet, the new action film written by, directed and starring Euro Millions winner Timothy Barker, with music by Timothy Barker.
Tonight's Euro Millions jackpot is a massive £28 million. That's dream come true money. Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Play online or on the app. Estimated jackpot. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Oh. Just there, Dave. Smashing. Great. Really? Night, Steve. Yeah, see ya. Built to take the big knocks. Samsung rugged devices. Easy to use, hard to break. Explore the Samsung Rugged range.
If you want to do something important, work in adult social care.
I'm Georgia. I love social care because you never know what each day will bring. The thing that I would say to anybody that was thinking about a job in social care is go for it.
We are recruiting in your local area. We need you now, and they need you always. Care for others. Make a difference. Today. Search adult social care jobs now.
The football boots that will help her score her first hat-trick. The tech that keeps you connected. The cozy jumpers that are perfect for snuggling up together. With a choice of ways to pay, you can make the most of family time. You can say yes when it matters most at very.co.uk. Goods and services provided by Shop Direct Home Shopping Limited. Credit provided by Shop Direct Finance Company Limited.
Dating can be tricky, especially when you can't meet face to face. So it's time to get creative with the easy way to replace physical dates, Video Call from Bumble, the dating app where women make the first move. Here's Anna Williamson and Tom Reed-Wilson with some tips on connecting online.
It's a bit harder to flirt with limited body language, but nothing beats a smile and some eye contact to show them you're interested.
And have an activity plan for your date. This will help break the ice.
Download Bumble today.
Okay, people, I've got the daily checklist. Who today has ignored a call on purpose? Tick. Talked yourself out of a workout? Tick. Spent far too long scrolling on your phone? Tick. Here's another for your list. BritBox. Streaming the BBC, ITV, Channel 5, and now Channel 4. All in one place and ad-free. So add BritBox to your list and get a 30-day free trial of the biggest box of British box sets. Search BritBox free trial. Tick. Biggest compared to other SVOD providers. Auto-renews at $5.99 a month unless cancelled. T's and C's apply.
Where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care. About each other. About our planet. About creating a better world for everyone. And becoming the best versions of yourselves. Join a community of like-minded individuals at the University of Winchester. Make sure to accept your offer by the UCAS deadline and visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
Let's talk about the losers in a trade war.
You benefit if you're just further away from China.
So that you can too.
What are the ramifications if she crumbles or doesn't crumble?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
Once we get through coronavirus, it's very supportive and very stimulative.
Central banks themselves got caught hostage by markets.
Finance.
OPEC Plus is at war with itself.
We know we can create America's energy independence again.
Investment.
The market's anticipating the rate getting very close to zero in fairly short order.
Volatility is back, so that's going to make for more cautious trading.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene, Jonathan Farrell, and Lisa Abramowitz on Bloomberg Radio.
Good morning, everyone. John Farrow, Lisa Abramowitz, and Tom Keene. Welcome coast to coast. Welcome worldwide to Up Markets. What you need to know right now is futures put it on earlier and continue to build, with futures up 38, Dow futures up 349, and the VIX in a solid 1.60 points. Risk on 31.69. John Farrell, what's the why this morning to higher market prices?
I think front and centre over the last several days, reopening the economy, Tom. That's where the focus seems to be. Certainly not corporate guidance, because we had no corporate guidance whatsoever this morning. PepsiCo, 3M, Xerox, UPS, all pulling their 2020 forecast so far this morning.
Many people, folks, talking about corporate guidance being not that important, earnings being not that important. And Lisa, they go right to your wheelhouse and say credit spreads matter. Are credit spreads better this morning?
Well, credit spreads have basically been flat. I mean, over the past few sessions, it really has just been basically a death line. Well, the reason why is it really goes right to the Federal Reserve. And I think that front and center behind the robustness of this market is the central bank activity. And we're going to hear from the Fed on Wednesday. And I'm very curious to hear any additional guidance on further asset purchases and also what the thresholds are for them to raise interest rates from zero.
Well, it's really important here to set up. We've got a wonderful must-listen global Wall Street guest coming up in moments. John Farrell, this is so important what Lisa mentions, and that part of the Fed international action are those swap lines which help beleaguered nations. There's a lot of beleagueredness out there this morning, isn't there?
Well, let's be clear. I think Lisa touches on the credit issue and you're touching on foreign exchange, and I think this is really important. A couple of months ago, there was real tension in this market. Liquidation, sell everything, reach for the dollar. The Fed has done a lot to alleviate some of those dislocations. Going forward from here, it's got to be about the fundamentals. When we reopen, how quickly can this economy normalize? Psychologically, how does a consumer respond? And what can the Federal Reserve do to assist that recovery? We're not at the point where we're talking about stimulus yet. Why stimulate an economy that's shut down? But when we reopen, it's the next stage of policy help that we need to reconfigure.
For Global Wall Street Now, a definitive conversation with Stephen Englander, the Standard Chartered Bank. Dr. Englander, thank you so much for joining us. There's so many things to talk about. I know John wants to pick this up and Lisa as well. Let me go to the piggy bank, to the fundamentals of running out of money. Turkey has reserves. Turkey has gold. Turkey has an off-the-cliff drop in reserves. Are we beginning to see countries run out of the piggy bank?
Well, I don't think we're seeing countries run out of the piggy bank. Global reserves are not down by that much. But what we've seen for a number of years is that countries prefer not to use their reserves if they can at all avoid it. It's viewed by the market often as a sign of weakness, and the commitment that you need if you're actually going to go in there with your reserves is bigger often than countries want to do. I think the other issue is for many countries that given the choice between conducting domestic monetary policy to ease and letting the currency drop, in the current situation, they're saying we're going to let the currency drop and try and get the economy going again.
Steve, Tom is pointing to this extreme action by the Federal Reserve, not just on a domestic sense, but also internationally. What is the world hoping to hear from the Federal Reserve tomorrow with regards to further expansions of the FX swap line, in addition to potential guidance as to when they may raise interest rates again, i.e. perhaps never, or whether they may expand asset purchases?
Well, look, I think expectations are dampened because, in part, the Fed has been making policy, in real time. So there's no, tomorrow is not a big moment in time. And even yesterday, they announced some extension of the municipal bond facility. But I do think that the Fed will try and convey that they're going to do what it takes, that they're not concerned about the pace of expansion of the balance sheet, and they want to try and stabilize financial markets as much as possible. I think external markets and currencies are more difficult. There's a limit to how much swaps they can do with poor credits. So far, they've limited it to pretty good credits in the emerging market world.
Steve, let's talk about what they can do in the credit market. I've heard from the likes of Oksana Oronoff of JP Morgan Asset Management in the last 24 hours, together with Dan Iverson of PIMCO, all asking the same question. The substance of the programs at the Fed, the reality of them. We've been trading the optics. They haven't bought a single high-yield credit as yet, and yet high-yield credit spreads have tightened aggressively. Have you got any idea how potent their participation will be in this particular space?
I think that they would love to avoid going too deeply into it and hoping the thing that they'll do what it takes is enough. I think at the end of the day, if you say, look, we're just going to stabilize the high-grade market, we're just going to stabilize treasury market, but we're going to let high yield twist in the wind, that could be a formula for markets going back into a very difficult situation. So I think at the end of the day, they will bite the bullet. They may get some support from Treasury in terms of taking an equity tranche here and taking the losses, but I think that if it's needed, they will go deeper into the high-yield market.
Is this about market functioning or market pricing, Steve? Are you clear on whether it's one or the other, or both?
Well, if they were convinced that they could get the market functioning without the market pricing, I think that they would be happy to let the market price. But I think that they view both as coming together. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to pick up on what John had to say. This sort of question implicit in there of moral hazard, right? This idea that a lot of traders are operating on the idea that the Federal Reserve will ultimately backstop pricing, not just market functionality, if things get bad enough. Do you think that is misguided?
Well, look, I think that if the market is functioning and if these firms are able to get credit and are able to carry on business, the Fed will be happy enough. I think if what we're seeing is a threatened wave of bankruptcies, I think the Fed shut its eyes, get some backstop from the Treasury, and go ahead and do it.
Steve Englander, we all have our benchmarks in foreign exchange, whether it's Mexican peso, this, that, our favorites that we follow. Let me ask a really sophisticated question. How close are we to 1998?
I think if we get anywhere close to 1998, we're in real trouble because the Fed has been, and other central banks have been doing everything to avoid it. So that would suggest that with throwing the kitchen sink at everything, they're still not able to avoid it. My guess is that we're not going to be there, but that the question of can all this monetary ease offset the economic headwinds that we're facing and will continue to face most likely even 6 months and 12 months down the road, that question is still very open.
Steve, what is the call on the dollar over at Standard Chartered right now?
Look, very short term, obviously we're seeing risk on and dollars selling off because it gained on the risk off scenario. We're concerned that we could get a second wave that could lead to, sort of a repeat perhaps of a smaller amplitude of what we saw in March. Ultimately, as long as we get to some sort of stabilization of market, there's been a lot of buying of dollars because of risk aversion and panic. And there's a lot of dollars getting thrown into the market. Any time that we have a sustained period in which markets are calm, dollar is likely to be under some pressure from these levels. Doesn't mean it's going to be 2002 to 2008.
I think to Tom's point, Steve, what he's thinking about with the late 90s is just the similarities to right now. Crude's absolutely plunging. EMFX has been in a nosedive as well over the last several months. And Tom, I've been wondering as well whether we've had that second wave in the markets in EM, whether we've had that EM shakeout the extent that we needed to off the back of everything that's happened.
Yeah, and this was so important here, Steve, just to squeeze in a little more here. I mean, we had Stan Fisher at the IMF at the time, and there were a lot of things that surprised us. What's the thing we can't see right now, Dr. Englander, that surprises you?
I think that the issue of how much structural change we're going to face, I think for those of us of a certain age, the way the world changed.
See how he does that, John?
The way the world changed after 1973, when we had the first oil shock and all this oil-intensive activity that we've been growing off disappeared, I think that the question of, how are we going to deal with all the people who've been hired over the last 10 years, basically who are engaged in face-to-face service provision, whether in retail or in services, many of them will have to move to other jobs, and how that interacts with the financial system, I think, and sort of public finance and monetary policy is going to be the question for the next 5 years.
Steve's allowed back. Stephen Englander of Standard Chartered weighing in on the FX market and the Fed. Let's get some news, some headlines worldwide. Here's Michael Barr. Hey, Michael.
Hey, John, Lisa, Tom. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says it might be time to consider a guaranteed income for Americans when it comes to a new coronavirus relief package. Pelosi insists that the next bill must provide aid to state and local governments to pay police, fire, and other frontline heroes. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell counters that his priority is to shield business owners from onerous laws. The leaders announced Congress will return May 4th, but some lawmakers are being warned that full operations may not be able to resume for a year. Governors in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, and Pennsylvania are banding together in fighting the coronavirus, but a tax loophole could soon strain relations. Bloomberg's John Tucker has the story.
A little notice provision in New York's tax law could leave billions of dollars in tax revenue up for grabs. It says anybody who works out of an office in New York but lives out of state must pay New York income tax. There is one exception. When work from home is a necessity. Because of government-ordered lockdowns, people may have a clear case for allocating their income during this time to their home state. Non-residents account for almost $700 million a month of New York's income tax revenue. John Tucker, Bloomberg Radio.
In Texas, the governor is allowing the limited reopening of restaurants, bars, and movie theaters on Friday. The governor is not requiring employees or their patrons to wear masks to protect against the spread of the coronavirus. In neighboring New Mexico, Governor Grisham is maintaining the public health shutdown, but in Grants, Mayor Martin Hicks has ordered the town of about 9,000 to reopen. Global news, 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, John.
Michael Barr, thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Michael Barr with the latest news headlines worldwide. Here's your price action this Tuesday morning. Tom, we advance. We are comfortably through 2,900. We're up another 1%. There is a ton of hope out there that as the months roll on, as the year grows older, the outlook gets a little bit better.
Really back to a bear market. I've got that chart, John, of correction in bear market. Of course, we plunged way below a bear market metric, and we've really come back to that from the peak down, 16, 18% or so. It's been a remarkable recovery.
Treasury's really well behaved in this environment. Off the lows in the equity market, Lisa, not much movement higher on 10-year Treasury yield, 0.65%, down a basis point actually in today's session.
Again, it goes to the sort of question of the Federal Reserve buying, right? I mean, you've talked about projections showing that the Federal Reserve is going to net be purchasing more than the U.S. Treasury Department is issuing with respect to treasuries. It just raises a question, is this a free market at this point? How controlled is this by the central bank? And what's the point of betting against them?
No is the answer.
If
central bank buying is outpacing issuance, then I think we've got a bit of an issue when it comes to free markets and pricing, don't we?
Agreed.
Your yields unchanged today. Your equity market advances up 36 points, up 1.25% through 2,900. From New York this morning, good morning to you all. Big week ahead. The Fed tomorrow, the ECB on Thursday, and a ton of tech earnings in and around those central bank decisions as well. From New York, this is Bloomberg.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Why is delivering the best client experience a top priority at BNY Mellon's Pershing? Michelle Feinstein, Director of Client Engagement, explains.
Today's investors want a financial relationship that's on demand, customized, and leverages the latest digital technology. At BNY Mellon's Pershing, helping advisory firms and broker-dealers create great experiences for their clients is our priority. Through our integrated wealth experience, we give you a high-touch service, flexible technology choices, and expert insights, so you can deliver a highly personalized experience to your clients at every step, from onboarding to wealth planning, to performance analysis and more. And because we're part of BNY Mellon, you'll benefit from more than 230 years of strength and stability. At Pershing, we're personally invested in your success.
Visit Pershing.com to learn more about Pershing's integrated wealth experience. Pershing LLC and Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC are both members of FINRA and SIPC.
Influential conversations from Bloomberg.
If you want to do something important, work in adult social care.
I'm Greg and I lead the team at a residential care home. Supporting people to live life to the fullest. It's an amazing job to have.
We are recruiting in your local area. We need you now, and they need you always. Care for others. Make a difference. Today. Search adult social care jobs now.
Dating can be tricky, especially when you can't meet face to face. So it's time to get creative with the easy way to replace physical dates, Video Call from Bumble, the dating app where women make the first move. Here's Anna Williamson and Tom Reed-Wilson with some tips on connecting online.
It's a bit harder to flirt with limited body language, but nothing beats a smile and some eye contact to show them you're interested.
And have an activity plan for your date. This will help break the ice.
Download Bumble today.
Okay, people, I've got the daily checklist. Who today has ignored a call on purpose? Tick. Talked yourself out of a workout? Tick. Spent far too long scrolling on your phone? Tick. Here's another for your list. BritBox. Streaming the BBC, ITV, Channel 5 and now Channel 4. All in one place and ad-free. So add BritBox to your list and get a 30-day free trial of the biggest box of British box sets. Search BritBox free trial. Tick. Biggest compared to other SVOD providers. Auto-renews at $5.99 a month unless cancelled. T's and C's apply.
4 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. And U.S. stock index futures are rising alongside European shares as governments contemplate reopening their economies and the earnings season gathers pace. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures are up 36 points. Dow futures up 358. NASDAQ futures up 91. The DAX in Germany is up 1.7%. The 10-year Treasury up 3/30 seconds. Yield 0.64%. Yield on the 2-year 0.20%. NYMEX crude oil falling down almost 12%. On $1.51 at $11.28 a barrel. And COMEX gold little change at $17.2350 an ounce. The euro 1.0877 against the dollar. The yen at 106.71. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom, John, and Lisa.
Karen, thank you very much. News out of Europe this morning. Banks getting a break on leverage limits. The so-called leverage ratio will be relaxed under an EU proposal announced today. We are lucky on this program to have an exclusive interview with the European Commission Vice President Valdis Dombrovskis. Valdis, always great to catch up with you, sir. Let's talk about it. Why did you make this decision this morning?
Indeed. European economy, as economies across the world are hit by the coronavirus crisis, and we need to come with also economic response to this crisis, because vast majority, if not all, EU member states will experience severe recession this year. So we need to provide necessary stimulus to the economy. We are doing this through major stimulus, fiscal stimulus, relaxing our state aid rules, monetary stimulus, but we are also looking at our banking sector rules, so utilizing existing flexibility in our prudential rules, and also coming with targeted amendments on the capital requirements regulation to facilitate bank lending capacity to the real economy. So basically what we are doing, to the large extent, we are following the decision of the Basel Committee to postpone implementation of so-called Basel III rules by 1 year. For example, you mentioned specifically a leverage ratio. This is exactly one of the decisions that are following up Basel.
We all want banks to be able to finance the economy. There'll be people listening to this program right now, though, wondering why we want risky European lenders to be holding less capital. What's the answer to that?
Well, first of all, we are not proposing that banks are holding less capital, because when we discuss finalization of Basel III, there were additional requirements which were agreed internationally, which were to gradually set in. And what Basel Committee has decided internationally is now to postpone the introduction of those additional requirements. And by the way, United States are also taking advantage of this Basel decision. So from that point of view, it's a part of coordinated international response.
Hey, Mr. Dombrovskis, we're honored that you're with us today. John and I love seeing you in Davos and at IMF meetings and such. I'm absolutely fascinated when you, with your heritage of leadership in Europe, believe we will finally see bank consolidation. Your job is extremely difficult. Madame Lagarde's job is extremely difficult, and the only solution is a consolidation within countries and a consolidation across borders. When will we begin to see that?
Well, actually, this is a process which we are already seeing, that if you look across EU member states, we see this process of banking sector consolidation gradually happening. Not that it's some kind of, regulatory aim of the European Commission to force bank mergers, but I would say also the additional prudential rules which had been introduced internationally and which we are implementing in Europe are facilitating this, and we are gradually seeing also this process of bank sector consolidation. Unfortunately, in Europe, we saw also another process of banking sector, banking lending, banking activities becoming more national, so less pan-European, and there we want to counter this tendency, so we want to have a banking sector which is across active across the EU, and the same goes with the capital market sector. That's, for example, why we are now working on our next stage of our capital markets union project.
The answer is often more Europe. It's intriguing to me that when it comes to the debt, the answer is never more Europe. The north of Europe, the Netherlands and the like, do not want debt mutualisation. There are many people outside of Europe looking right now at European officials getting together and trying to come up with a plan to offset the pain in the European economy. Valdis, help me understand that, help our audience understand that, why we are still no closer to shared debt in the Eurozone.
First of all, it's worth noting that already with the measures which have been taken in Europe, we already have provided a response, fiscal response, liquidity support of the scale of 3.4 trillion euros. This is the EU's largest ever response to the crisis. So this is something which is already done.
Yeah, but Vladis, this is so important. Vladis, this is so important what John brings up, and I know you've done 3 trillion as well. Our American audience wants to know what you and Klaus Regling believe will be the mutualization of debt in Europe. Do you have any optimism that could occur?
Well, actually, what I was referring now is immediate crisis response. Currently, we are working on the EU's recovery plan, which will be based on ambitious EU budget for the next 7 years, so-called multi-annual financial framework, and we will come with a, so to say, classical EU multi-annual budget, and there will be additional recovery fund which we propose, which among other things will be financed by the joint borrowing through the European Commission in financial markets. So we'll be raising financing jointly at the European level to finance our European response to the crisis and to finance economic recovery.
Valdis, we've got to leave it there. We wish you the best. We wish Europe the best, of course. Valdis Dombrovskis, European Commission Vice President. Tom, just touching on some of the difficulties on the continent.
I can't convey, folks in America, how important that interview was for the linkage of coming out of this crisis, John. This mutualization issue is, can Europe be more like America? I see no indication it can.
I agree with you, Tom. Equity futures this morning up 39. We advance on the S&P 500, positive 1.37% on the S&P through 2,900, quite comfortably. Big tech in focus, and the data too. More still ahead, right here on Bloomberg Radio.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of Your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Hey y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
This is a Bloomberg.
If you want to do something important, work in adult social care.
I'm Greg and I lead the team at a residential care home. Supporting people to live life to the fullest, it's an amazing job to have.
We are recruiting in your local area. We need you now, and they need you always. Care for others, make a difference. Today, search adult social care jobs now.
The garden tools that mean you can grow your own. The fire pit that turns tea time into an alfresco dining experience. The paddling pool that turns your back garden into a water park. With a choice of ways to pay, you can make the most of family time. You can say yes when it matters most at very.co.uk. Goods and services provided by Shop Direct Home Shopping Limited. Credit provided. Subject to status by Shop Direct Finance Company Limited. 18+.
Okay, people, I've got the daily checklist. Who today has eaten dinner for breakfast? Tick. Started a chore you'll never finish? Tick. Done a conference call in your pajamas? Tick. Here's another for your list. BritBox. Streaming the BBC, ITV, Channel 5 and now Channel 4. All in one place and ad-free. So add BritBox to your list and get a 30-day free trial of the biggest box of British box sets. Search BritBox free trial. Tick. Biggest compared to other SVOD providers. Auto-renews at $5.99 a month unless cancelled. T's and C's apply.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
From New York City, this is Bloomberg Surveillance for our audience worldwide. We're live on Bloomberg Radio, 60 minutes away from the opening bell. Equity futures up by 39 points and positive 1.4%. With the data, the economic data in the United States of America, here is Vinny Dajudice.
Good morning, John, Tom, and Lisa. Let's start with trade. Merchandise trade March, the deficit widening to $64.2 billion. That's a $5 billion widening. Where do we go from here with the coronavirus? Well, here's a story on the Bloomberg quoting the CEO of United Parcel Service, says it's been like turning off the light switches. On that note, wholesale inventories down, retail inventories with stores shut up. 10 o'clock Wall Street time, consumer confidence, economists looking for historic drop in the Conference Board report. I'm Vinny Dajudice, Bloomberg Radio. Let's go back to New York.
Vinny, thank you, sir. Thank you very much. The data's still ahead this week. There's a lot of it. The Federal Reserve decision tomorrow. We'll get first quarter GDP in the United States as well. Your first quarter GDP estimate at the moment, negative 3.9%. First quarter annualized GDP. That will be your first read for the data out of the United States of America for the first quarter on the GDP front. A little bit later in the week, of course, claims come on Thursday. Then on Friday, we get an ISM. I said it yesterday, Tom, just a reminder. This month in May, your payrolls report won't come on the 1st. It will come on the 8th, so next Friday.
I mean, just the basic, folks, we just take it for granted, but that first quarter ended March, and you can get out your coronavirus calendar to see how that negative 3% number John was talking about folds into March, and then how you stagger over to the beginning of the second quarter in this April. Diane Swonk joins from Grant Thornton. She has been hugely valuable in our coverage of the monetary experiment known as the Federal Reserve. Diane, thank you so much for joining us. What's the theory of this Fed right now as we begin to get ready for an original Fed meeting? Remember the Phillips curve, Diane? I believe we remember things like that. What's the underlying theory right now?
Well, I think the Fed is trying to do everything they can to deal with an economy that's been hit like a meteor, like from outer space, and knocked the entire globe off its axis. The Fed really does treat this more than any other institution I've seen out there as an external shock, one that is not tied to bad lending and bad decisions prior to, but it has huge economic consequences, and it's willing to play a role in lender of all sorts, I say, instead of just
I like
last
that.
resort.
I'm going to steal that.
Yeah, because it wants to sort of be out there and provide a backstop wherever possible. The problem is the Fed is really limited, not in the ways we once thought, because, boy, have they surprised us and humbled us in their ability to think outside the box. But they are still a lender, not a spender. That's what Congress does. And for those companies and individuals needing actual direct aid, that's not something the Fed can do. They can only lend their way through this, which means more debt. They can't give grants and things like that, which many are in need of at this stage of the game.
Diane, the lender of last resort, the Fed has basically ridden this wave of hope and expectation that they will continue to do whatever it takes to either prop up valuations or smooth out market functioning, depending on how you want to look at this. How important is it that the Federal Reserve clarifies just how willing it is to, say, delve into equities or go further into junk bonds?
That is important. I think, the issue on junk bonds has already raised some eyebrows, and I think, the issue here is the fallen angels and how do we deal with those. But it's very important that the Fed also draws some lines in the boundaries of what they're willing to do. And I think you see right now the perceptions of the Fed, even though they're doing whatever it takes for as long as it takes, which is really important on their forward guidance as well, to say they're not going to pull this too soon and pull the plug on the economy and let it fail. That's really important. But the other side is it's fed into, I think, something you're alluding to, and that is the break between the economy and the stock market and the valuations we see in equity prices versus the real economy and how much it really is suffering, not being reflected as sort of the investors in the stock market appear to be whistling by the graveyard of coronavirus.
And we've seen people sort of call the Fed out for being too vague in sort of describing how far they're willing to go. The latest criticism actually comes from two New York Fed officials, former New York Fed officials, including Simon Potter, who famously was on the markets desk, where they basically are saying their March 15th statement was too vague and that they should really demonstrate what the parameters are for them to raise rates or to, on the contrary, inject additional stimulus into the economy.
That is something we're starting to hear, and I think it's a valid issue, and that is because the Fed has said we'll do whatever it takes for however long it takes, and the Fed has surprised us on how far they're willing to venture into places they've never gone before. That has left markets speculating on things that perhaps are not most productive and really caused this wedge. So I do think it would be useful. On forward guidance, I think we got to give the Fed some leeway here. They can't just say we're going to do this for the next 2 years. They could say we're going to do this at least for the next 2 years until the economy gets to its previous highs in terms of economic activity or inflation were to heat up instead of cool off. They could put parameters on it like that, but I do think you're right that they need to be much more explicit about what they're willing to do and what they're not willing to do. I don't think we're going to get all the answers from this meeting.
Well, let's sit on that just for a little bit more, shall we? Forward guidance, the kind of forward guidance we could get from them. What would you recommend, Diane? Would it be time contingent forward guidance or would it be data contingent?
I think it's got to be data contingent because time contingent, as we found in the past, can be wrong. And that's one of the things the Fed learned during the expansion was, as they said, well, we'll keep this on until the next year or the next 2 years. That in and of itself was not enough. You needed to say you're listening to data dependence. Remember how that emerged as a much more important verbiage regarding forward guidance. And so I think you really got to see a Fed that's willing to commit to getting us through this period without it becoming a deeper recession and a Great Depression.
I'm trying to figure out if Arthur Burns' smoke rings from his pipe were data or time dependent. I can't remember which they were. Diane, all this is great, and all of this is painless. And to go back to the guy named Schumpeter and creative destruction, when do we have the price of capitalism where, you have an exogenous shock like this and things happen like combinations from the 30s. When do we see American industry combine out of a crisis?
Actually, I think we're going to see the biggest consolidation we've ever seen out of this crisis, and I don't think it's as painless as you are sort of letting it look and appear, and perhaps the Fed needs to clarify that. One of the things the Fed can't do is lend and lose money, and Treasury is also being held accountable not to lose money with the collateral it's providing for the Federal Reserve. That means the Fed and Treasury are likely to actually err on the side of being more conservative than many would like, and importantly, than is necessary for an economy that's been hit by such an external shock, and more firms will fail, and we'll see more consolidation. That's becoming the sort of view. We'll see a lot more consolidation and mergers and acquisitions out of this, which means more power in a few companies on the other side.
Exactly. That's right where I wanted to go. That was a brilliant answer, Ms. Swank. I want to go to that word power. Who controls the power of consolidation? Is it going to be government mandated? Is it going to be tycoon mandated? Is it going to be board of directors mandated? Who drives the ship forward?
Well, given that the lenders are out there and going to be more conservative and I don't want to make losses, I think, the lenders, both in the Fed and the Treasury, are going to have a huge say in this. Also, the banks and the oversight that's provided to them. So even though they've gone into more risky areas than they have in the past, this also is hitting much more of the economy than they have in the past. And so it does look like this will be a collective effort of companies that have good balance sheets being able to weather the storm and eat up companies that don't. And on the other side of it, you're going to see the consolidation also triggered by not companies that can't get access to lending and can't stay alive. So this isn't the same as what we talked about before, and I think that's something we really have to think about. The other side of this, the new economy, the new normal, is going to be similar but not the same, and different in very important ways in terms of market power.
Well, Dan, let's talk about it, the debt. Let's think about it in two phases. The first phase was about access to the debt. Who can get access to the bridge to the other side? That often involves debt. The second phase is going to be about the debt itself. There's going to be a lot of companies that come out of this, if they survive, with a lot more debt. What does that mean for the trajectory of this recovery?
That's going to be an interesting issue, and it really depends on the Fed's willingness to keep interest rates low and make the servicing of that debt very easy, and how much we're willing to restructure the debt to make it over a long period of time and easy to absorb. And I think that's going to be one of the key determinants on the other side of this, is how long people worry about the term extend and pretend. I think we did that a lot during the expansion. Going forward, I think we're also going to see very low interest rates for a very long time. The Fed's fear right now is deflation, not inflation. That means they'd like to see things reflate in the economy, and that means keeping rates lower for much longer, and even other things we haven't talked about, controlling the yield curve as well.
Dan, always great to get your thoughts. Dan Swank there of Grant Thornton, the chief economist, joining us on the latest. Let's get you some news, some headlines worldwide, shall we? Here is Michael Barr.
Thank you, John. Lisa, Tom. President Trump's new coronavirus testing plan is designed to help states reopen their economy soon. But as we hear from Bloomberg's Martin DeCaro, the new plan may not fix a persistent problem.
The states will still have the primary responsibility to obtain the tests.
Governors across our country are literally competing for supplies.
Virginia Governor Ralph Northam says while his state's been able to double testing capacity to 4,000 a day, it's still well short of its goal of 10,000. But the Trump administration is not aiming for comprehensive surveillance testing, what public health experts say is necessary to reopen safely.
The testing is not going to be a problem at all.
There have been more than 5 million COVID tests in the U.S., or about 1.5% of the population. The administration's new plan supposed to give states the ability to test at least 2% of their residents every month. In Washington, Martin DeCaro, Bloomberg Radio.
The coronavirus pandemic is causing Americans to worry more about their finances than health, according to a new study by MetLife. The largest U.S. life insurer says money was the top concern for 52% of full-time U.S. workers, compared with 44% who were most anxious about physical and mental health. The first major test of an almost completely vote-by-mail election during a pandemic is about to unfold in Ohio. Today's primary also could provide a preview of a November election that might still be marred by the coronavirus outbreak. Joe Biden has all but locked up the Democratic presidential nomination since the state's March 17th primary was delayed. Instead, the spotlight has shifted to the process. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, John.
Michael Barster, thank you very much. This equity market is looking good if you're long. We are up by 40 points on the S&P 500, positive by 1.38%. Mild risk on, risk appetite improving once again. Yields lower still by 2 basis points to 0.64%. A curious move in the bond market, giving the improving risk appetite elsewhere. In the commodity market, we give up some of the losses of the morning on WTI. WTI crude, $11.54. The earnings very much in focus. I know I sound like a broken record, but they are the big five, the big tech companies reporting. Alphabet, Google, as you say, Tom, coming after the close a little bit later today. The tech companies report in an environment where nobody is providing any guidance at all. We had UPS, Xerox, PepsiCo, and others this morning. 3M too, pulling guidance, providing no forecast for the road ahead.
I will say that Apple, however, has postponed the delivery of its latest model of the iPhone, and that's not being viewed as necessarily that negative. But the guidance that we are getting indicates that it's going to take a while for people to get back on the ground when it comes to actually spending.
I wonder, guys, and I really wonder, like the banks, John, where they're spinning a PR message, if the tech companies almost have to spin a message, not of woe is me, but their understanding of how difficult this economy is, and almost apologize for how well they're doing.
I agree.
It'll be interesting to see.
I agree. There's a huge PR effort going on, Tom. Let me tell you, when we reopen and these multinationals don't have to worry about the PR effort, I just wonder how they look at the payroll coming out the other side of this. No one wants to see that happen, but you can see it happening, particularly at the big banks. There's a lot of people who are going to have to right-size the business that do not want to do that while things have shut down. When things reopen as we go into 2021, different story, I'm afraid. From New York City this morning, good morning. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Live on Bloomberg Radio.
This is your Bloomberg Real Estate Report. I'm Denise Pellegrini. The mortgage industry in chaos with landlords and lenders on pins and needles as that May 1st rent payment day approaches.
When cash flow stops, you have a problem.
And Tom Barrick, CEO of Colony Capital, says the sudden disruption shocked the massive and once thriving market.
For most of the $33 trillion in North American residential, we've lived the Goldilocks era, right? For 10 years, 2010, it's been 46% home price appreciation. It's gone.
Black Knight says at least 6% of homeowners are already skipping mortgage payments legally because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And Barrick says if more isn't done to help bondholders, mutual fund and ETF investors and pension funds could really be hurt.
Right now, we have to save the patient. And it's going to be complicated. There's going to be a lot of turmoil. There's going to be a lot of agony. And it's going to be fits and starts. This market isn't going to recover fast. It will recover, but not fast.
And that's your Bloomberg Real Estate Report. I'm Denise Pellegrini.
25 years ago, NJIT graduate Dick Sweeney co-founded Keurig Green Mountain, a company whose incredible innovations changed the way the world brews a cup of coffee. Today, he lectures widely on business leadership and is a strong advocate for NJIT's work to combine business education with the power of STEM.
NJIT is definitely fostering the innovative thinking for budding entrepreneurs simply because that's the world we live in. NJIT is producing students that have been trained, educated, and given the business acumen to be a contributor to a company. The distinct mission is to develop great STEM scholars. The attributes I've always looked for in team members are heart, smarts, guts, and luck. So we want people with passion, intelligence, courage, and never discount luck. The student coming out of NJIT has experienced all of that.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Connecting decision makers to a network of new...
Coming soon, Ricochet, the new action film written by, directed, and starring Euro Millions winner Timothy Barker, with music by Timothy Barker.
Tonight's Euro Millions jackpot is a massive £28 million. That's dream come true money. Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Play online or on the app. Estimated jackpot. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
If you want to do something important, work in adult social care.
I'm Georgia. I love social care because you never know what each day will bring. The thing that I would say to anybody that was thinking about a job in social care is go for it.
We are recruiting in your local area. We need you now, and they need you always. Care for others. Make a difference. Today. Search adult social care jobs now.
Okay, people, I've got the daily checklist. Who today has eaten dinner for breakfast? Tick. Started a chore you'll never finish? Tick. Done a conference call in your pajamas? Tick. Here's another for your list. BritBox. Streaming the BBC, ITV, Channel 5 and now Channel 4. All in one place and ad-free. So add BritBox to your list and get a 30-day free trial of the biggest box of British box sets. Search BritBox free trial. Tick. Biggest compared to other SVOD providers. Auto-renews at $5.99 a month unless cancelled. T's and C's apply.
Another day inside? I've turned my place into a gymnasium. I'm using the stairs for lunging and the washing machine as a power plate. But if you'd rather shed pounds off your outgoings, take a few minutes to check your bank account for any unwanted direct debits. It's just another small step towards money calm. Money Supermarket.
Breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow, and U.S. stock index futures are rising alongside European shares as governments contemplate reopening their economies and the earnings season gathers pace. Crude oil is lower. The dollar is weakening. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. Right now, S&P futures are up 40 points. Dow futures up 394. NASDAQ futures up 92. The 10-year Treasury is up 7/32. The yield 0.63%. The yield on the 2-year 0.20%. NYMEX crude oil is down 10%, down $1.27 at $11.51 a barrel. And COMEX gold is up 0.25% or $3.70 at $17.27.50 an ounce. The euro 1.0883 against the dollar. British pound 1.2498 and the yen at 106.60. Caterpillar shelving its traditional earnings forecast for the rest of the year while warning the second quarter will be more impacted by the coronavirus than the first. Merck reported adjusted earnings per share that beat analyst estimates, so it said it's temporarily suspending its share buyback program. And PepsiCo's earnings per share beat analyst estimates while the drinks maker joined the list of companies withdrawing 2020 forecasts. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Lisa.
Karen, thanks so much. We have done so many different stories of this great pandemic, and we thank all of the medical professionals we've dealt with worldwide. At the Johns Hopkins University and at their hospital is someone who is not so much expert on infectious diseases or virology, but expert on the people that do this every day, and that, of course, is the nurses. Nisa Ernst is with Johns Hopkins, and here's our conversation with Ms. Ernst on the state of nursing.
There's been a tremendous response throughout our health system, as well as many other health systems, to really get out and aggressively test the community and follow some of the ideas that we've learned from the other areas of the world that have been tackling coronavirus.
Nisa, there have been a number of reports, about ventilators, the use of ventilators, whether they're good or not. One of the things that's also come in Europe is the fact that actually, because there's a shortage of frontline medical workers, that you're retraining others to try and do these very difficult procedures at times. How is that going?
That is very interesting. It's actually going very well. It was very difficult in the beginning. The profession of medicine is very protocolized, and it's not necessarily very agile. So you would have to change not only your skill set, but your mindset in order to provide the safest, highest quality patient care. You bring up a really good topic. We have what we call proning teams. We have found that proning, which is a physical maneuver that's very common I'm in endoscopy. We do it all the time with patients that are sedated in order to get them more oxygenation. And we found that by proning patients early and often, we reduce the use of ventilators in a lot of our patient care areas.
You're one of the rarest things out there. You were out in the real world doing terrible jobs, and then you finally got a real job in nursing along in your career in Sheraton, Johnson & Johnson, and others. I want you to talk about the nursing profession now. How are nurses as an industry going to come out of this pandemic? They've got to be changed after what we've all observed. Where will nursing be in 2 years, in 5 years, in 10 years?
That's a great question, and I was actually thinking about that when I was driving in. You're right, I have a business background. I came into nursing as a second career. One of the things that this pandemic is showing us is that nurses are going to take a very different role 2 years, 5 years, 10 years down. Nursing is what I call very silent work. No one really knows what we do. And I think this pandemic has shown the world what we do and what we do well. Nurses are incredibly innovative and creative, and they're also very, very good at maintaining high-quality patient safety standards.
Yeah, but when do they get respect within the system? And I'm not only talking about nursing folks, I'm talking about the interns, the residents, the people in the trenches of these hospitals. It seems like, am I right, they're the last ones to get paid? When does that change?
You know, I can't answer the pay question. I can tell you what is interesting here, and I'm speaking specifically for Hopkins. One of the things that Hopkins has done is recognize and honor every employee in this organization who comes in every day to provide some type of care, either direct patient care or indirect patient care. One of the other things that this pandemic has shown us is that, you know, we're a big institution. We're no different than a lot of other healthcare institutions. We're big, we're lumbering. It takes us years to make a decision. This pandemic has shown us that you're right. There are people right at the front line who make excellent decisions in a very short period of time that make a huge difference in a patient's outcome.
Mr. Ernst, the Johns Hopkins University, that has been a joy to speak to some of their officials each and every day. Lisa Abramowitz and Tom Keene with Futures Lifted. Lisa, I love what you did in drawing my attention to this story off our China desk this morning. And this is a great, great study. I don't pretend to be expert on it. SARS versus the coronavirus. And it's a mystery, isn't it?
Well, basically, people saw SARS disappear because the people who contracted the virus tended to manifest really severe symptoms and were able to be isolated, and it didn't spread as quickly or easily as the coronavirus that we're dealing with now. Basically, Chinese scientists believe that this coronavirus is going to be with us for the long term, that we're going to have it come back in waves, just like we see the influenza, which really raises a question going forward, especially before we get that vaccine, which is how do we deal with this in a way that's sustainable over a longer term?
Well, yeah, and then, of course, there's the age distribution, too, of so many old people really, really pounded by this virus. But, you know, to my mind, Lisa, it's so many unknown unknowns. You know, we're flying a lot more blind here than we thought we were. I guess we're less blind than February 25th, but not much.
But not much. I mean, we don't have a sense of how long the particles remain in the air, how quickly it spreads from person to person, whether or not it will drop off in terms of the numbers of cases come the heat of the summer in the Western world. A lot of questions here. And as we look at this, they're trying to expedite the vaccine testing, but this process typically takes years, like decades. And yet, so we're not expecting it in short order.
Well, we saw the constructive article out of Oxford University today on their moving their vaccine process forward. And I know Peter Hotez at Baylor University is leading another charge there as well. On the markets, Lisa, it's just absolutely remarkable to me to see not so much a certitude of gloom, but 0, 0, up, up, up. And yet that's what the market does, always confounding.
I guess fear of missing out is kind of outweighing fear of the unknown, right? I mean, because right now the unknown is all we have, and yet people are worried about missing this rally given the amount of stimulus that we're seeing from around the world.
Yeah, we'll have to see what we've got, folks. Let's frame it right now in a loose way here, because it was sort of a non-news day, and then it became very interesting. Quickly, equities up, as I said, with the VIX in under 32 is a huge deal, really denoting the optimism. Dow over 24,000. Yields have a life of their own, a little bit lower yields. I don't want to make too much of that. But what I'd really point you to is the shock and awe of West Texas Intermediate once again hammered, and even Brent crude for a good while under $19 a barrel. Stay with us. This is Bloomberg.
Asset managers who see.
If you want to do something important, work in adult social care.
I'm Greg and I lead the team at a residential care home. Supporting people to live life to the fullest. It's an amazing job to have.
We are recruiting in your local area. We need you now, and they need you always. care for others, make a difference. Today, search adult social care jobs now.
Okay, people, I've got the daily checklist. Who today has eaten dinner for breakfast? Tick. Started a chore you'll never finish? Tick. Done a conference call in your pajamas? Tick. Here's another for your list. BritBox. Streaming the BBC, ITV, Channel 5, and now Channel 4. All in one place and ad-free. So add BritBox to your list and get a 30-day free trial of the biggest box of British box sets. Search BritBox free trial. Tick. Biggest compared to other SVOD providers. Auto-renews at $5.99 a month unless cancelled. T's and C's apply.
Right now at the Halifax, wherever we're working from, we're all working together to be there for you.
So our customers can apply for a payment holiday on mortgages, loans or credit cards.
And because we want you to stay home and stay safe,
we've created step-by-step guides to help you set up online and mobile banking,
which is safer and easier than you may think.
But for those that really need to see us in person, we're keeping as many branches open as possible.
So however you need us at the Halifax,
we're here to help.
Terms and conditions apply. For more information, go to halifax.co.uk.
The Woj Pod with Adrian Wojnarowski.
Doris, you had reason to believe that you needed to get a test for the coronavirus.
Right. Well, let's just start with the headline, which is I did test positive for COVID-19. I was so tired from Saturday the 14th through Tuesday, March 17th. I kid you not, I could not be out of bed for 5 minutes without needing to go back to bed and lay down.
Search the Woj Pod to listen.
Get your daily dose of NFL shop talk with these great podcasts on TuneIn. Start your morning off right with Around the NFL.
Injured, depleted roster into the playoffs, and I didn't think they belonged in the playoffs.
I think overall, though, it was a great divisional round weekend because you got the first one.
Run into the end zone with the Move the Sticks podcast.
We had a fun little Zoom cocktail hour last night.
Oh, yeah.
What a star-studded affair. Greg, you were there for the earlier part, but it really popped off a little later on. We had Zach Goldman.
And dive deep into the sidelines with the Peter King podcast.
On the occasion of his 50th birthday, come down and record a little bit of retrospective on the life and times of Brett Lorenzo Favre.
That sounds like a bestseller.
It sounds like a precursor to a funeral. That's what it is.
I wasn't thinking that.
Explore these and more hard-hitting NFL podcasts right here on TuneIn.
To help make the most of your time at home, TuneIn is sharing our top activities for social distancing. Tip number 4, relax. Don't feel like you have to be productive during these stressful days? This is the perfect time to focus on yourself. Whether that means meditating, taking a bath, sleeping in, or doing nothing at all, take a deep breath and treat yourself. For more indoor inspiration, search Listen from Home on TuneIn.
In a trade war.
You benefit if you're just further away from China.
So that you can too.
What are the ramifications if she crumbles or doesn't crumble?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
We are being taken out of our comfort zone by the coronavirus.
Dollar weakness is pretty much a good thing for a lot of the rest of the world.
Finance.
We are going to see a global demand contraction this year, most likely, for oil. The financial health of the business sector has deteriorated somewhat.
Investment.
Obviously, the value in high-vol stocks are going to continue to suffer.
It looks as though the bond market is talking itself into a recession here.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Good morning, everyone. Paul Sweeney and Tom Keene, Bloomberg Surveillance. We welcome all of you coast to coast, listening in your homes on all of our digital product, including Bloomberg.com. We welcome Washington, Boston, San Francisco in an early morning. Good morning, Bloomberg 960, the Bay Area. And here in a beautiful New York today, cold but getting warmer, finally, New York City, Bloomberg 1130. Good morning as well. We've got lots to talk about. First, though, Bloomberg Surveillance, as always, brought to you by Cohn Resnick Advisory Assurance Tax. Cohn Resnick can help your business mitigate disruption and mobilize for the future. Visit their coronavirus resource center today, cohnresnick.com/COVID-19. Paul, you are expert in walls of worry. We're climbing walls of worry today, aren't we?
We are, once again, Tom. I mean, I think, I was just listening to you and Lisa and John in the prior hour here. I mean, there's so much economic uncertainty out there, but as Lisa suggested, maybe a little bit of the fear of missing out. And, there's certainly no getting around the fact that, central banks around the world are pulling out all the stops to keep financial markets humming.
We will have to see with our individual stock report as he dives into 600 of the S&P 500 reporting this week. One David Wilson. Where do you start, David?
I'm going to start by talking about the Dow companies that have reported, the ones in the Dow Jones Industrial Average. There are 4 of them, and we see a contrast in 2 of the averages drug makers. Pfizer's up 2.5% in early trading. They reaffirmed annual forecast after reporting first quarter earnings and revenue that beat analyst average estimates in Bloomberg survey. Contrast that with Merck, which is down 2.5%. The drug maker lowered this year's earnings and sales projections in response to coronavirus. Merck's results for the first quarter surpassed estimates. So definite contrast there. 3M's up 4.5%. The maker of medical masks and a whole lot of other products posted first quarter profit and sales that exceeded estimates. And Caterpillar, little changed at the moment.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, the construction and mining equipment maker predicted this quarter will be more significantly impacted by the coronavirus than last quarter was, so which may well be true for a lot of companies as we go forward here. You're seeing the automakers higher. General Motors up 3%, Ford up 6.5%, Fiat Chrysler up 4%. Now, Dow Jones is reporting that they're aiming to restart some U.S. production on May 18th. That's according to unidentified people familiar with the matter. The timeline depends on a workers' safety agreement with the United Auto Workers Union. Going back to earnings, you've got United Parcel Service down 4%. UPS, the package delivery company, had a smaller first quarter profit than analysts expected. UPS said it's cutting this year's capital spending by about $1 billion. PepsiCo's up 2%. The soft drink and snack maker had first quarter earnings to beat projections. Cummins, the engine maker, up 7%. Profit and revenue for the first quarter beat estimates. D.R. Horton, the home builder, up 7% as well. Fiscal second quarter results topping projections there. You're seeing the medical testing companies move higher for a 5th straight day on the prospect that business will benefit from COVID-19 tests. Laboratory Corp of America, a.k.a. LabCorp, up 7.5%. Quest Diagnostics up 7%. Harley-Davidson's up 7%. The motorcycle maker is in talks to line up $1.3 billion in bank financing and expects to raise more money by selling securities. Harley's worldwide retail sales dropped 18% in the first quarter. Also watching Southwest Airlines. Not a whole lot of change in early trading. Actually, it's turned higher now, up 1.5%. The carrier is selling the equivalent of a 12% stake to raise $1.6 billion at yesterday's closing price. And Southwest raising another $1 billion through a sale of convertible bonds.
Interesting. David Wilson, thank you so much. Really look forward to the reporting through the week and into next week as well. We've had important conversations today. The most important conversation today on oil. The most important conversation today on the Brazilian real. None of that matters. What matters is if you're ever so lucky to have a gain, somebody's going to tell you to rebalance. Our Senior Vice President Rebalancing, Barry Ritholtz, joins us right now. Barry, you and I know that if you're at an outside barbecue with Barry Ritholtz and there's 30 people in the backyard and you've got 70 bottles of your various hot sauces that you're working around, the way to heat up the conversation is not your hot sauces, but to talk about rebalancing. Group A says it's brilliant. Group B says make this thing go away. Which is it?
It's a little bit of both. It's a rabbit hole you could fall down and get lost in just a million permutations on what's the most efficient, effective, and productive way to rebalance. But we like to keep it simple. If you have a basic asset allocation, make it up, 60% stocks, 40% bonds. And within the stocks, you have some U.S. and some emerging markets and some non-U.S. developed. And because of the fact that they either ran up too high or fell very low, and they're beyond your original allocation percentage, this is pretty much the closest thing to a free lunch, is rebalancing once or twice a year back to your original allocation weights. And the reason is simple. You're selling a little bit of what got very expensive. You're buying a little bit of what got a little cheap. On a organized, rule-based method, that's as close to a sure thing as you're going to get, at least over long periods of time.
So, Barry, but just think about, just the last several months with that 30% plunge in equities, and now we've retraced maybe even a little more than half of that here. That gets tough for the average investor, doesn't it? You get whipsawed around there, and you run the risk of just trying to time the market?
Well, instead of rebalancing is very different than timing the market, and just put this in terms of that 60-40 portfolio. So bonds had a really nice rally during the sell-off. There was some volatility, but for the most part, bonds are higher while stocks fell 35%. If you have an internal rule, rebalance when you're 10% away from your original weightings or when markets fall 25 or 30%, it doesn't have to be anything more sophisticated than that.
Yeah.
Well, it means that you're buying into equities down 35%, not a whole lot, just around the margins, and you're paying for it by trimming a little bit of the bonds that have run up as much as they have. And so you're just getting back to your original allocation.
Anybody that's followed me knows I'm not a fan of rebalancing, but I really want to emphasize, as Mr. Ritholtz said there, folks, timing is different than rebalancing. The biggest problem with timing, folks, is you can't get back into the market. Rebalancing forces you to do that, which is a really cool thing. Barry, look, Paul Sweeney and I'm in the triple leveraged all cash fund. Sweeney bought the railroads playing Monopoly. He's got short line Pennsylvania. He's trying to buy the B&O Railroad this week. Only Ritholtz bought 10,000 shares of Microsoft the day Ballmer went out the door. I mean, I get that, okay? You're the one who's got the huge gain, and it's taxable if you affect a rebalancing. Why do I want to affect a taxable transaction if I've got a big pop in one of these glory stocks?
Really, really good question. So
it's my only good one of the day, so go with it.
I'm going to give you a couple of answers. One is, for the most part, when you're doing rebalancing, you're not doing it with specific stocks. You're doing it with broad asset classes, fixed income, tips, corporates, emerging market equity, developed ex-US equity, etc. However, if you have 10,000 shares of Microsoft dating back to 2009, well, you probably have a wildly disproportionate amount of risk concentrated in a single stock. And rather than think about that in terms of rebalancing, what you want to do is say, hey, this is I'm making up numbers, this is a $5 million portfolio with $1 million in Microsoft. That seems kind of risky to have 20%. And so over time, you shed 5 or 10% a year so you can manage your tax capital gains taxes on that, and you rebalance a single stock into a broader index. What you're giving up in exchange for the possibility of fantastic performance is steadier growth, much less volatility, and the ability to deal with the market. Go back to 08-09 and look at how much Apple and Microsoft and Amazon fell. Amazon was like $8 in 09, down from hundreds of dollars. Apple has had countless 50, 60, 70% crashes.
Barry, that's when I got out of Amazon at $8.42.
Well, instead of hitting the bid all at once, you should have just trimmed a little bit or been a buyer at that price.
Barry, company after company are pulling guidance. Are we finally going to get away from the whole guidance thing and missing numbers and beating numbers from the sell side?
I would be perfectly okay if they pulled guidance for the rest of the year, number one. And number two, the idea of insiders having a whole lot of insight into what the rest of the year looks like under normal circumstances is suspect at best. 12 months is so long, and there are so many unknown unknowns, i.e. a pandemic, that it's really a futile exercise. Under best of circumstances, today, it's laughable to suggest anybody has any clarity about when the economy will reopen, when there'll be a corona treatment, when there'll be vaccines. Nobody has a clue.
Right.
So to try and say, here's what we think the company is worth 6 or 12 months out, it's just...
Okay. Barry, what a clinic. Thank you so much. Mr. Ritholtz, folks, look for Master in Business, the podcast, also writing for Bloomberg Opinion. Ritholtz with our news in New York City. Here's Michael Barr.
Tom, Paul, thank you very much. The Trump administration's unveiled their new plan to scale up coronavirus testing. However, some are skeptical. Bloomberg's Martin DeCaro explains.
Despite what President Trump says,
we're doing everything in our power to heal the sick and to gradually reopen our nation.
State leaders say the federal government is still not doing enough to help them obtain tests. And the administration's new plan leaves states and cities in charge of solving the testing shortage. L.A. Mayor Eric Garcetti.
I do believe that a strong national government should be the ones procuring things so we're not competing against each other. You know, whether it's 79 cents for a mask or $7 for a mask is an embarrassment.
Public health experts warn that U.S. testing capacity, while improved, remains a fraction of where it should be, and it could take weeks to get there. In Washington, Martin DeCaro, Bloomberg Radio.
Meat isn't just going to disappear from supermarkets because of outbreaks of COVID-19 among workers at U.S. slaughterhouses, but as the meat plants struggle to remain open, experts say consumers could face less selection and slightly higher prices. Industry leaders acknowledge that the U.S. food chain has rarely been so stressed and that no one is sure about the future. The coronavirus pandemic is causing Americans to worry more about their finances than health. That's according to a study by the largest U.S. life insurer, MetLife. Money was the top concern for 52% of full-time U.S. workers, compared with 44% who were most anxious about physical and mental health. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Paul.
Michael Barr, thank you so much. We appreciate that. We are trying to get this market open for you in about 16 minutes right now. Futures looking strong. Green on the screen. S&P up 42 points. Got the Dow up a good, let's call it 425 points, Tom. 24,425 on the Dow. NASDAQ lagging a little bit, up about 1% to 89.09 on the NASDAQ. Let's get a check on that oil just real quickly. It continues to be weaker again today. WTI down about 25 cents a barrel, $12.50 a barrel on WTI crude. This is Bloomberg.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong. Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing, LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Influential conversation.
Coming soon, Ricochet, the new action film written by, directed, and starring Euro Millions winner Timothy Barker, with music by Timothy Barker. Tonight's Euro Millions jackpot is a massive £28 million. That's dream come true money. Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Play online or on the app. Estimated jackpot. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
The football boots that will help her score her first hat-trick. The tech that keeps you connected. The cozy jumpers that are perfect for snuggling up together. With a choice of ways to pay, you can make the most of family time. You can say yes when it matters most at very.co.uk. Goods and services provided by Shop Direct Home Shopping Limited. Credit provided by Shop Direct Finance Company Limited.
Okay, people, I've got the daily checklist. Who today has ignored a call on purpose? Tick. Talked yourself out of a workout? Tick. Spent far too long scrolling on your phone? Tick. Here's another for your list. BritBox. Streaming the BBC, ITV, Channel 5 and now Channel 4. All in one place and ad-free. So add BritBox to your list and get a 30-day free trial of the biggest box of British box sets. Search BritBox free trial. Tick. Biggest compared to other SVOD providers. Auto-renews at $5.99 a month unless cancelled. T's and C's apply.
News 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. U.S. stock index futures are rising alongside European shares as governments contemplate reopening their economies and the earnings season gathers pace. Crude oil extending its plunge and the dollar weakening. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures up 41 points. Dow futures up 411. NASDAQ futures up 81. The DAX in Germany's up 2.1%. 10-year Treasury up 7/30 seconds. Yield 0.63%. And the yield on the 2-year 0.20%. NYMEX crude oil is down. Well, it's jumping around right now. It's down about 7 cents. It's at $12.70 a barrel. And COMEX gold is up 0.1% up $2 at $17.2580 an ounce. The euro, 1.0863 against the dollar. British pound, 1.2471. The yen, 106.69. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Paul.
Karen, thanks so much. Paul Sweeney and Tom Keene, we right now want to frame the VIX. I know there's all sorts of pros listening to us going, Tom, why do you quote the VIX? Nobody cares about the VIX. But it's the mother of all barometers. It is the volatility of the blended 500 stock S&P 500 right now. And as you know, Paul, and we know this from Dean Carnett, there's a whole futures market of the VIX. And then there's, I love this phrase, Paul. Yeah, I can only do this with a martini in my hand, Paul. Volatility on volatility.
Exactly.
What is volatility on volatility?
It's incredible. We've seen the volatility of the VIX, Tom. I mean, you quote it religiously, and for, months and months and months prior to the crisis, you were quoting numbers 12, 13, 14, and then during, early March, mid-March, it spiked up to 40, 50, 60, got up to over 80 during that, rapid sell down. And that is absolute panic. We heard it from a lot of the strategists and economists we were talking to, and fund managers, absolutely panic, quote unquote, in the market. Now we've seen, during this rally where we retraced it, we've seen the VIX come down steadily. So now we're here down with a 31 handle, Tom.
On the edge of exuberance, we welcome the laureate of Yale University, Robert Shiller, who we always talk to when we can. I want to go more philosophical here, Professor Shiller, and that is to speak of your quiet book that didn't make the press of exuberance and this, that, and the other thing, and that is Finance and a Good Society. The clear observation of Republicans and Democrats is Europe and the United Kingdom are figuring out how to come to the aid of their citizens in a less clumsy manner than America. How do we get to that point in America? Or do we even want to get to a European model of a good society?
Well, I don't know if we want to go whole hog into a European model, but I think that it is true that our free market orientation sometimes has us miss essential roles of the government. At a time like this, people have contracts to pay money, like rent or interest on corporate debt. There should have been something in those contracts that allowed for a circumstance like this, but there isn't. So the government is the risk manager of last resort. It comes in and does common sense things that, if the ideology supports it. And I think that we could learn something from Europeans. That there's, no free market contract can anticipate everything, and we do have to have some interposition of government authority, and this is a time like that.
So, Professor, just in the last 10, 11, 12 years, investors have had to deal with two extraordinary shocks, first the financial crisis and now this pandemic. Are you concerned that investors, just when you think about individual investors, that their psyches may be permanently altered here as they think about risk, as they think about, how to invest their capital longer term?
I wouldn't use the word permanently, but maybe for years. Yeah, the psychologists talk about something called the affect heuristic, and that is a tendency for people when they're frightened by something. The fear extends to many things in their lives, even things that are unrelated to it. So this pandemic has scared us. It has us wondering whether we'll survive another couple of weeks. That's quite a scare, and it's going to affect other things like the stock market or the housing market. We'll see about these things.
Yeah. Professor Schiller, one more question, if we could, in too short a visit today. How does exuberance come back? There's lots of people pushing against Robert Schiller right now saying exuberance is gone. And yet you and I know your study of history is always, in every case, exuberance returns.
Right.
How does it do that? How does it do that?
Well, this is one of the mysteries of human psychology that it's called animal spirit. There's a desire for adventure, and there's an optimistic bias that comes back eventually. So after 1929, we had the stock market coming really right back up into like 1936 or so, almost all the way up in real terms. And then it sank again. So these things are still not fully understood, but it does have something with the human spirit.
Robert Schiller, thank you so much. He is the Nobel laureate of Yale University. The tradition here, folks, is always on Bloomberg Surveillance to tell you about the Clark medalist for 2020, Melissa Dell of Harvard University, is the new winner of the Clark Award, the best economist under 40 years old. That is a huge deal, particularly with her study of economic history. That is a bellwether award, Paul, on the study of economic history. This isn't about mathy and all that. It's about almost the economic philosophy of another time. That from Melissa Dell of Harvard, winner of the John Bates Clark Award this year.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see how economic historians look back on this time, Tom, with just, unique, once in 100-year type of thing. We get this pandemic and the economic responses and financial and fiscal responses that we've seen from central banks, from governments when it's fiscal stimulus. It's going to be obviously just compelling history for years and decades to come.
Yeah, it would be wonderful. And, of course, her study of institutions, extraordinary folks. And that, of course, goes back to Douglas North of Washington University in St. Louis and many, Engerman and many others as well. Let me try to get here. I've got my extremely sophisticated Bloomberg terminal on my iPhone. That's what I'm using right now. Paul, it's amazingly powerful, isn't it?
It really is. I mean, the folks at Bloomberg Engineering, they put incredible amounts of power into just the palm of your hand. Most people have their multiple screens set up at home, Tom, but you're just going super mobile, right?
I'm going super mobile, and if I was sitting with Tim Cook now, I'd talk about log charts on an iPhone. That's pretty cool. Futures up 39, Dow futures up 400, the VIX 31.46. Melissa Dell wins a John Bates Clark Award medal. This is Bloomberg. Good morning.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Vattel Shah is Senior Project Engineer at Mott MacDonald, a global engineering consultancy with more than 16,000 employees. He earned his PhD at New Jersey Institute of Technology, and as an adjunct professor is helping NJIT students explore emerging technologies.
My focus is renewable markets, emerging technologies, the idea of floating cities. What are we doing to develop that? What will happen to the city on the water? Well, you're going to have waves hitting it. You're going to have solar. How are you going to develop plants? How are you going to develop vegetation and farming? That sort of thought process happens at NJIT. We actually plan out what will the city look like. How do we develop that? So in 10 years, we're actually ready to take on those challenges when we have our first development in the water. NJIT also has been doing a lot of work in self-healing materials, so taking the polymers and the new material that we have in our material sciences departments and putting them into things like concrete, things like steel, reinforcing our soil.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Stock futures are...
Dating can be tricky, especially when you can't meet face-to-face. So it's time to get creative. With the easy way to replace physical dates, Video Call from Bumble, the dating app where women make the first move. Here's Anna Williamson and Tom Reed-Wilson with some tips on connecting online.
It's a bit harder to flirt with limited body language, but nothing beats a smile and some eye contact to show them you're interested.
And have an activity plan for your date. This will help break the ice.
Download Bumble today.
Okay, people, I've got the daily checklist. Who today has ignored a call on purpose? Tick. Talked yourself out of a workout? Tick. Spent far too long scrolling on your phone? Tick. Here's another for your list. BritBox. Streaming the BBC, ITV, Channel 5, and now Channel 4. All in one place and ad-free. So add BritBox to your list and get a 30-day free trial of the biggest box of British box sets. Search BritBox free trial. Tick. Biggest compared to other SVOD providers. Auto-renews at $5.99 a month unless cancelled. T's and C's apply.
Introducing the new single, Impossible. From Central American rock and blues trio, Steady Rolling. Their epic story of love and loss continues. Download and stream the single, Impossible, from the band Steady Rolling, wherever good music lives.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks to National Lottery players, communities across the country are about to benefit from up to £300 million of funding.
Thank you. Thank you.
Money that will help support the most vulnerable in these exceptional times.
Thank you. Thank you.
Food banks, local health organisations, charities combating loneliness, and thousands of other community causes will all get vital resources.
Thank you. Thank you.
And it's all thanks to you, playing the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen.
Casting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
Good morning. I'm Karen Moscow along with Tom Keene and Paul Sweeney. And the S&P 500 is higher at the open, up 1.4%, up 40 points to 2918. The Dow Jones Industrial Average up 1.6% or 374 points at 24,500. and the NASDAQ is up 1.1% or 98 points to 88.29. 10-year Treasury up 9/30 seconds, yield 0.63%. The yield on the 2-year 0.20%. NYMEX crude oil is down 2.8% on 35 cents at $12.42 a barrel. COMEX gold is up 0.1% up $2.10 at $17.25.90 an ounce. The euro 1.0867 against the dollar. The yen 106.65. Tom and Paul.
Karen, thanks so much. Paul Sweeney and Tom Keenan. With us now, David Harrow, Harris Associates, one of the world's great international and value investors. David, the charts are measured by standard deviations. What that means, folks, is 1 or 2 standard deviations is within the realm of normal, and then you get outside that. And right now, the differential between growthiness and valuiness has never been more of a deviation. Have you ever seen it like this, David? Have you ever seen the love of growth and the lack of value? Have you ever seen it like this?
No, the closest we've come was late 08, early 09. But other than this, I haven't seen it. And to me, it actually is a great cause for excitement, because when you get such a price anomaly, and the price anomaly is the ignorance of value of business, is the ignorance of what a business is priced at. And we know fundamentally what makes a company valuable is its cash flow stream. And so eventually this will come back to us. So to me, the greater the spread is, the better the future looks.
There are a set of, David, this is important. There's a beautifully answered, by the way. There's a set of catalysts that get you to that word eventually. Are they instigated by investors, or are they instigated by corporate action when officers and board members say, wait a minute, why are we so cheap?
It's probably all of the above. And what I think eventually happens is investors begin to see, say, the light at some end of the tunnel. Whatever is the trauma that has caused the huge dichotomy between valuations. In 08, 09, it was the great financial crisis. And when people began to see a stabilization of the global economy, you saw that spread between growth and value narrow, because people thought, well, okay, these businesses are going to be okay. They're going to make it through the cycle. Today we have the same type of price movement, but amplified and with a different cause. And the different cause was a medical affliction. And when people begin to see the light at the end of the tunnel for this, I also believe that you will see that. And at the same time, companies also become frustrated. And they begin to do things to try to realize value, whether that means selling an asset that isn't reflected in their valuation. We see this in our own portfolio. Take a company like CNH. Is going to separate into 2 businesses, off-road and on-road, off-road being tractors and construction equipment, on-road being trucks and components. So we see companies, when they do become frustrated, they'll take steps, in whether it's to crystallize the value of a business, a change in management, stock repurchases, or dividend distributions, they will take steps. So I think it's both those things, but the big move will probably come when people realize they're underexposed in the most undervalued assets. And as they're so undervalued, it doesn't take much to get them up and going again. It's a very small door to enter. And when a lot of money begins to flow into that door, the door size gets much bigger.
So, David, given the volatility that we've seen just in the last 3 months, where are the sectors that you're seeing the most value or the most mispriced assets?
The funny thing is that it's just a continuation of what we've seen in 2018 in particular. 2019 was kind of a break year. And then 2020, that same value versus growth. Take consumer discretionary, industrials, European financials. They're what really got clobbered during this crisis. And safety, e-commerce, technology, this is what really did well. So there wasn't really a change. There was just an opening of the magnitude of the spread, and the volatility on any given day was actually like something I've never seen. We had a stock in our portfolio, Ashtead, One day it opened up down 20%. The day before it was down 15%, and it closed up over 10%. I mean, these are just huge intraday. Forget about intra-week, intra-month. These are intraday price movements. Now, I will say it's settled down. I mean, you could see the VIX went from a high of 80, and now it's just over 30. So we are starting to see a little bit of calm return to the market.
So what does that mean for the banking and the financials? I mean, we've had a number of people. And Elisa Nuzzi of Bloomberg Opinion was on today basically saying, David, if Europe can't figure out how to consolidate banking now, when are they going to do it? Are you just chomping at the bit over the next 2 years of what financial will do?
Well, I think the financials in Europe will do well only because they've been beaten up so bad. I mean, you were able to buy the quality of the sector. Let's take a BNP Paribas. A week ago for just over 30% of book value. In the last great financial crisis, it didn't trade that low. And one would argue they're much safer investments today given their capital positions. In the financial crisis were 4 or 5%. Today they're 13, 14%. So you have safer banks trading at lower prices because I believe the big pockets of money played the same game plan, the same pitch. We're in instability. We're in fear. Short of European financials, and they moved as a bucket. And so to us, as kind of marksmen, we're able to pick and choose the quality and buy those that have really sold down, which we believe are at unsustainable levels. The reason why I believe it's so unsustainable is A, you have the low price, B, you have the strong balance sheet, and C, believe it or not, even with the low and negative rates, you've seen resilient earnings. You've seen earnings behave because there are other levers that the managements have been able to pull to protect their earnings. And so this is why we've remained exposed in these areas, and we're very excited about the future prospects of our portfolios. It's really, really hurt us. We had a terrible first quarter.
And so do the Milwaukee Brewers, so don't feel bad.
Easy. You could say the same thing about the Packer draft.
So they David, didn't get Tom Brady. I thought Tom Brady would go to the Packers. Why'd you take a quarterback?
That's a really, really good. Well, I don't know. I kind of understand why we took a quarterback. I'm not sure why we took that quarterback.
Okay, well, there we go. Paul?
So, David, how about energy? We talk about value, but boy, there's just so much risk in that space. How are you viewing energy right now?
I mean, I think there is a lot of risk in energy, but if you look at the short term, it's hard to believe that the normalized price of oil is $12.31. That's what it says on my screen right now. However, I will say this. So I think in the near term, there is opportunities because oil is oversold. I think oil is significantly oversold in the short term. But in the medium and long term, oil in particular, to me, it's hard to make a case given supply and demand. Now, gas, of course, is a little bit of a different story because gas, I think, has continued use as long as you could get gas to the market. It's relatively clean, and transports clean, and burns clean, and it's very low priced. And as long as you could have access to pipelines and LNG and this type of thing, I think gas could be a very good business. I worry about oil because I think demand for refined products over the medium and long term will continue to go down. And I think that the supply, at least at this stage, there's just so much of it. But I think at this price, you have an opportunity if you're a trader, but that's not necessarily who we are. We do have some exposure in our international portfolios via Synovus. But we don't have a lot of energy at Harrison. There's some where we believe there's a good management teams and good production profiles, good production costs, and good balance sheets. But you got to be careful.
So, David, as you look at this market here, how concerned are you that, as Tom and I have been talking about, for the longest time, it's really centered on a small number of names. I mean, I'll call it FANG Plus or whatever other moniker you want to. It just doesn't seem healthy for the market overall. How much of a concern is that for you?
Well, it's a very good point because it hasn't been healthy for us as long-term value investors. It's been terrible for us. And I think this actually gives us a pause to be optimistic because eventually we believe the market will spread out. And those names which do have good fundamental value characteristics, value by us defined as low price, high quality, but are being ignored just because they're not in that narrow sector which you describe. So if you're an index holder or a passive holder or a holder of these assets, which have been loved now for the better part of a decade, I would be slightly worried. If you're someone like ourselves who are positioned for when this love turns to like and at some point maybe dislike, we believe we are very well positioned and we'll be happy for when that day comes, when we have a more dispersement of valuation within the markets.
David Harrell, thank you so much with Harris Associates. Greatly appreciated this morning. Paul, it's an absolute conundrum. You and I know, Paul, have seen that chart, not only large cap, small cap, but just the value growth proposition now is truly, folks, historic. Also historic with our news. Here is Michael Barr.
Tom, Paul, thank you very much. Senator Elizabeth Warren and Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez are working together on a proposal to suspend mergers and acquisitions for big companies during the pandemic. That's according to an NBC News report that says the Democratic lawmakers plan to announce the proposal today and introduce the measure after Congress returns to session. Warren and Ocasio-Cortez cite reports that private equity companies, big technology firms, and Rite Aid are weighing deals as the pandemic batters the economy. Dr. Deborah Birx, the White House Coronavirus Task Force Response Coordinator, said people should wear masks during social gatherings to avoid the spread of the coronavirus. Birx spoke today on Fox News.
Talking, singing, certainly sneezing and coughing can pass the virus on to others. And because you can pass it when you're asymptomatic, people don't know that they're infected. And so if there's virus in the community or you're gathering people from different areas of a state where there may be still residual virus and no virus, if everybody wears a face mask, then you're protecting the other person.
Mayor Muriel Bowser is tapping some big names for a big job, reopening Washington, D.C. Bowser says former First Lady Michelle Obama recorded radio ads and robocalls so people will know about free coronavirus testing for the most vulnerable residents.
I think that many people don't think that if they have a symptom that they may attribute it to something else, or they may wait too long, or they may not know that testing is free, or they may not know where all the locations are.
Bowser says widespread testing for coronavirus needs to include all options before any reopening can occur. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Tom.
Michael Barr, thanks so much. What you need to know on this Tuesday, of course, into all the Fed meetings that we see through the weeks, I should say central bank meetings that we see through the week, and also those important earnings. David Wilson following the earnings for Bloomberg Radio is a higher stock market. It is an extraordinary to see the good action in futures today, and as David Harrell mentioned, the VIX. Wow, a 31 handle. Stay with us. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Pursuits look at luxury. Not everything in the time of coronavirus is bad news. First night of the NFL draft, for example, held digitally, was the league's most watched opening round ever, up 37% from last year. There appears to be pent-up demand for new sports content of any sort. The first two episodes of ESPN's Michael Jordan documentary drew record numbers for that network last week. The $1 billion video game coaching business is also ramped up during lockdown. Between December and March, the amount of time people spent playing popular shooter games such as Fortnite and Overwatch nearly doubled. And for travelers, when you can travel again, here's a silver lining. The dreaded coach class middle seat is gone. For now, near-empty planes allow carriers to give passengers more space for the sake of social distancing. For now, at least, U.S. carriers plan to cull their schedules by as much as 90% for May and June, given the meager sales, leading to fewer but more crowded flights. Visit BloombergPursuits.com for more. I'm Andrew O'Day, Bloomberg Radio.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma.
The hard part was determining that I was going to do it, but I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education and to finish what I started to get my diploma. Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Global News 20.
Another day inside? I've turned my place into a gymnasium. I'm using the stairs for lunging and the washing machine as a power plate. But if you'd rather shed pounds off your outgoings, take a few minutes to check your bank account for any unwanted direct debits. It's just another small step towards money calm. Money Supermarket.
This week on the New Yorker Radio Hour, our writers fan out to report from across the city at the height of the coronavirus outbreak in New York.
I won't say it's business as usual, but, we still have responsibilities and we are handling everything. But, I'm not going to let COVID beat me.
That's the New Yorker Radio Hour from WNYC Studios. Listen to this episode on TuneIn today.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow, and U.S. stocks are headed for their third straight gain as governments contemplate reopening their economies and as earnings season gathers pace. Automakers and banks leading gains in the S&P 500, the dollar weakening. Oil is slumping. It was down to $10 a barrel before it recovered some ground. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. The S&P 500 up 1.25%, up 35 points at 29.14. Dow Jones Industrial Average up 1.25% or 297 points at 24,432. And the Nasdaq is up 0.7% or 56 points at 87.84. 10-year Treasury up 9/32, yield 0.63%. The yield on the 2-year 0.19%. NYMEX crude oil now down 2.7% on 35 cents at $12.43 a barrel. COMEX gold is down 0.3% or $5.10 at $17.1890 an ounce. The euro 1.0852 against the dollar, and the yen is at 106.71. On the earnings front, Google parent Alphabet is among those still to report today. We did hear from Caterpillar and PepsiCo. They joined companies shelving earnings forecasts for the rest of the year. Caterpillar is down 0.7% right now. Merck reported profit that beat analysts' estimates, while UBS Group gained after its earnings rose. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Paul.
Karen, thanks so much. Of course, Paul Sweeney and I are always pleased when Damian Sassauer can show up. We usually only get him on when the 10,000th of a lira point forces lira to 7 per dollar. This is the Turkish lira, folks, and it's quoted now 6.9995. So, Damian, we're going to break a rule and take you early before we get a 7 print on lira. Why is Mr. Erdogan and all of Turkish finance completely focused on the 7 level, 7 lira per dollar?
Yeah, I don't know why they're focused on that level, Tom, but, you make a great point. It has kind of hovered right around there. They've definitely defended it. You see that in the reserve data. You see that just in terms of the price action. But look, Vetbull and I, we're looking at the volatility surface across asset classes here. Look, the price of hedge protection will always correct first in the term structural volatility, Tom. So what does the term structural volatility tell us? It tells us that we could take a little bit more risk today. I think you're going to see a lot more short vol strategies because many of them have been flushed out, and I think their popularity is rising as we speak. And you're going to see the inverted term structure of a lot of these volatile EM currencies start to normalize here in the near term, at least.
Okay, they're going to normalize. Normalize to what? Just flatten. Like a short-term kind of thing and flatten? I get that. But are they going to normalize towards all is calm on the range? Or is all your radar up about the greater pandemic picture in this great global economic contraction?
Well, I think the one thing that's for certain is so long as inflation is not a problem, big if, you're never going to fight central banks with all that's going on in the world. And so you're seeing easing out of emerging market central banks, and that's going to be more effective than rate cuts at this stage, right? But be very, very careful, Tom, as we know, because quant easing increases their monetary base and weakens EM for the long term. Now, this means there's going to be both winners and losers, right? Who are the winners? It's going to be companies here in the U.S. who might very well want to outsource to places like Brazil, because the cost of labor now is so very, very cheap. But it's a loser for domestic economies, obviously, because invariably it will increase inflation domestically.
So, Damien, oil just cannot catch a bid here. We thought we had a little bit of stability, but again, just more movement to the downside. I mean, how much more pain can oil do for the companies and the countries that you look at in emerging markets?
Yeah, I mean, oil is completely technical. What you're seeing in WTI, I mean, it really is specific. I mean, we have seen moves in Brent, and certainly, with June futures coming due here on Thursday, I mean, there's definitely some volatility there that one can expect, just given what we've seen in WTI. But, I take the flip side of that, Paul. I look at gold. I mean, if you just look at the steep vol term structure in gold, I mean, it's steepened really considerably, which means, look, if you think things are going to kind of, you want to take advantage of things getting potentially a little bit better, I mean, that's dislocated pretty considerably on the back of all the stuff we're seeing in oil, right? So, I think, again, you need to see, a lot of the kind of vol surfaces normalize in order for us to take real risk. I would not touch, I have to be honest with you, a lot of the high beta EM currencies. I think one that's come in a long way in recent weeks is the Indonesian rupiah. It's got some, it's real. Yeah, I mean, look, I have to say it stands out relative to the rand, the real, the ruble, the rest of them. I mean, I'd fade the strength here just because, hey, I mean, there's some real weakness there. It's trade deficit. I mean, it's budget deficit's going to rise threefold, and you get paid 7.25% yield on 5-year money there. So, why not take advantage of that on a currency hedged basis?
So you're betting that you want to own the Indonesian rupiah for the rupiah to strengthen against the dollar, is that right?
Yeah, I want to own rupiah rates, but I want to do it on an FX hedge basis. So I don't want to own the rupiah.
Tom, you could type that trade right into your Bloomberg terminal right there.
I can. I'm sure I can. And lose money before the green button's pressed. I mean, it's just so romantic talking to Damien Sassauer. Let's talk about an EM currency pair, euro-yen. Okay. I mean, the yen is stronger. Is it stronger because the yen's stronger, or is it stronger because the euro's weaker? Which is it?
Oh, God. I mean, look, I think there's no doubt about it that if you just look at inflation expectations, this is something I like to look at, that the U.S. relative to the EU, inflation expectations are more closely tied to growth in the U.S. than Europe. And so what the European inflation break-even curve is kind of telling me is that, it's not recovering anytime soon. It's basically, inflation expectations are going nowhere in a hurry in Europe. And so I think it's more to do with the euro than the yen. I think the yen continues to trade kind of, off the back of, risk on, risk off, et cetera. Forget about Kuroda and what the BOJ is doing. I mean, the markets didn't even react to that, Tom. It's really going to be the euro here, and the euro's pricing in lower for longer.
Okay, I agree.
I'm still trying to buy the rupiah here.
Yeah, please. The euro break even is something. Pharaoh, I think he bought a summer place, I think in Sicily, off a rupiah trade. Well, exactly. I don't know. Damien Sassauer, thank you so much with Bloomberg Intelligence. Just always superb on EM, and as he said there, the major message is EM doing better today. Paul, we're up 307 Dow points. We're up 400 in futures. I guess 24,441. I mean, that's remarkable.
Yeah, it is, and in context of the earnings we're seeing, Tom, we're as Dave Bloomberg Stock Center Dave Wilson was just telling us, we're right smack in the middle of earnings season, and it's ugly, and we're getting forecasts pulled by companies left and right. But obviously, investors are looking past that. And I think investors are looking past it and saying, hey, the next big move might be some of these countries and some of these states reopening, and that might suggest a little bit better outlook for the back half of the year. So I think that's kind of where the market is right now.
The bottom was 18,200 on the Dow.
Yeah.
So we've had a 6,000 point move.
Yeah. It's just extraordinary on the back of central banks and on the back of fiscal stimulus.
I'm in the triple leverage all cash fund. I didn't know that.
Yeah, you did. So we retraced about half of that pullback. So it really is extraordinary. We'll have to see if the fundamentals, economic and financial fundamentals are going to be there in the back half of the year.
Yeah, I use Fibonacci's, but I can't spell it. Paul Sweeney, thank you so much. It's been a really wonderful day. Thank you to Richard Truman, who produces the show on occasion. This is Bloomberg. Good morning.
Asset managers who seize change to
Coming soon, Ricochet, the new action film written by, directed, and starring Euro Millions winner Timothy Barker, with music by Timothy Barker.
Tonight's Euro Millions jackpot is a massive £28 million. That's dream come true money. Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Play online or on the app. Estimated jackpot. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Dating can be tricky, especially when you can't meet face to face. So it's time to get creative with the easy way to replace physical dates, video call from Bumble, the dating app where women make the first move. Here's Anna Williamson and Tom Reed-Wilson with some tips on connecting online.
It's a bit harder to flirt with limited body language, but nothing beats a smile and some eye contact to show them you're interested.
And have an activity plan for your date. This will help break the ice.
Download Bumble today.
Okay, people, I've got the daily checklist. Who today has eaten dinner for breakfast? Tick. Started a chore you'll never finish? Tick. Done a conference call in your pajamas? Tick. Here's another for your list. BritBox. Streaming the BBC, ITV, Channel 5, and now Channel 4. All in one place and ad-free. So add BritBox to your list and get a 30-day free trial of the biggest box of British box sets. Search BritBox free trial. Tick. Biggest compared to other SVOD providers. Auto-renews at $5.99 a month unless cancelled. T's and C's apply.
At Lloyds Bank, we're doing everything we can to protect you against fraud. Unfortunately, there are some who are using the coronavirus outbreak to try new scams. Well, don't be fooled. Lloyds Bank will never call, text, or email and ask you to move money into another account or ask for your banking details. Also, if you're buying online, always check the seller is genuine and always use your card to pay, as it protects your money. Lloyds Bank. Now more than ever, we're by your side.
The Woj Pod with Adrian Wojnarowski.
Doris, you had reason to believe that you needed to get a test for the coronavirus.
Right. Well, let's just start with the headline, which is I did test positive for COVID-19. I was so tired from Saturday the 14th through Tuesday, March 17th. I kid you not, I could not be out of bed for 5 minutes without needing to go back to bed and lay down.
Search the Woj Pod to listen.
Hey, it's Jacoby here from Jalen and Jacoby. And after you watch The Last Dance on ESPN, which you're obviously going to do just like the rest of us stuck in our homes in quarantine, you can join Jalen Rose and I for Jalen and Jacoby, The After Show. And we will be joined by the director of the documentary series, Jason Eyre, to discuss each episode in detail. You can hear our After Show right here on ESPN Radio on Sunday nights after the episodes air. And they'll be available on the Jalen and Jacoby podcast feed.
Search Jalen and Jacoby to listen today.
Get your MLB fix with these great podcasts on TuneIn. Fill your seventh inning stretch with the Ringer MLB Show.
I just can't get over it. It's like, Jeter Downs. Didn't realize he was a top. Like, my dad is drinking the Kool-Aid on this. He's like, of course. Mookie was going to leave. I'm like, what do you mean? You don't know that.
Slide into second with the Starting Nine podcast.
Nolan Arenado slides right into the top spot for a favorite baseball player. Active in the league right now. It is a pleasure to be sitting next to you, sir.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
This is, we've been waiting a long time for this. We actually, in terms of active
Round the Bases with the StatCast podcast.
Ways of going about it. I picked third, so in some ways it made it easier for me. Mike, just to go over the first couple of picks, Mike took Barry Bonds, who I think was kind of the obvious guy to take number one, not only.
Catch these and more MLB podcasts right here on TuneIn. 4 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney.
Are we on the brink of a more serious downturn?
I've always thought of the municipal bond market as a little bit of a safe haven.
Banks are going to have to start paying their depositors more.
Are we still in that mode where we're buying the dips?
Breaking market news and insight from Bloomberg experts.
Cash, if you're looking at Treasury bills, provides a higher return than stocks and bonds here in the U.S.
If your consumer is a woman, you're more likely to be a growth company.
Longer-term interest rates can go down, even with short-term interest rates still going up a little bit.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Good Tuesday morning from New York City and points beyond to our worldwide audience. Coming up, we're going to chat with our good friend Ira Jersey of Bloomberg Intelligence, get his thoughts on what to expect from the U.S. Federal Reserve this week. Plus, we're going to chat with Ellen Wald, president of Transversal Consulting, on the global oil markets. Is there a bid out there for oil? But first, let's go to Greg Jarrett of Bloomberg News for a Bloomberg Business Flash. Greg, what do you have?
Well, Paul, we opened really pretty high, but then stocks started to head a little bit lower. They're still well up, though, for a third straight gain. Governments, state governments, and national governments are contemplating reopening economies. And the earnings season gathered pace. The dollar is weaker. We check those numbers every 15 minutes throughout the trading day. S&P 500 is up 0.7%, up 20. The Dow had been up well over 300, is now up 0.7%, up 173. And the NASDAQ is up 0.2%, up 18. The 10-year is up 10.30 seconds. The yield 0.62%. West Texas Intermediate crude has gone from red to green. It's up 3% now at $13.17 a barrel, while COMEX gold is down 0.9% at $17.0860 an ounce. The dollar yen stands at 106.72. The euro $1.844. And the British pound $1.2453. The world's biggest maker of mining and construction equipment is predicting the pain from the virus crisis is far from over. Caterpillar says the current quarter will be more significantly impacted by the pandemic after profits for the first 3 months of the year trailed analyst estimates. Right now, the stock for CAT is little changed. That's our Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett. Bloomberg Markets is underway with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney.
Greg Jarrett, thank you so much. Market Drivers is brought to you by Commonwealth Financial Network. For the sixth straight time, J.D. Power ranks Commonwealth #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms. Visit commonwealth.com to learn more. It turns out that no news or withdrawn guidance or no visibility is good news, at least when it comes to equity valuations. Dave Wilson, Bloomberg Stocks editor, is here with us to explain why we're seeing equities continue to bleed up despite the increasingly bleak headlines, as well as companies coming out and saying, yeah, we don't know.
Well, what it comes down to really is that at least you can define a certain amount of what businesses have been doing. You know, people looking at first quarter numbers and liking what they see. I mean, even if you're seeing the likes of PepsiCo and UPS pull back from their projections for the year, it beats having nothing. Now, I'll point out, one area that you're seeing some pretty solid gains is in the home builders. And I bring that up because we had numbers out of D.R. Horton for their fiscal second quarter, earnings and sales beating estimates, at least the analysts we surveyed here at Bloomberg. Now, clearly the coronavirus is having an effect on their business. They talked about how April orders are down 11% from a year ago. That said, you got D.R. Horton shares up 7.5%. And you look elsewhere in the S&P 500 at the builders, you see Lennar up 6%. You see Pulte Group up more than 6%. So I suppose the story there is it could have been worse as much as anything. That's sort of what you might take away from what we're seeing in stocks. I mean, as you said, they pulled back from where they were at the opening bell. That they're still fairly solidly higher. I mean, the only areas where you're seeing declines among the 11 main industry groups, communication services, and that's the group that includes Google's owner Alphabet, which is out with results after the close today, and Facebook due out tomorrow. And then healthcare, and a lot of that is Merck, because as opposed to other drug makers who sort of maintained their full-year forecast, Merck brought them down in response to the coronavirus.
Another theme, in addition to pulling guidance, as Lisa mentioned, is a lot of companies suspending or canceling their dividends. I saw across the Bloomberg story today, more companies have suspended or canceled their dividends so far this year than in the previous 10 years combined, which is just extraordinary. So clearly corporate America, Dave, is in this let's really rationalize our cash and really conserve our cash.
Well, there's a lot of that going on. I mean, and then there are the companies that are looking to raise more cash. Harley-Davidson, right at the forefront of the gains in the S&P 500, and they're talking about $1.3 billion in bank financing. They're planning to go to the capital markets for more money. Now, whether that's stocks and bonds, we will find out in short order. And you see Harley shares at the moment up 10.5%. So even though, if you looked at their first quarter results, you saw worldwide retail sales were down 18%. So that definitely gets your attention. So does Southwest Airlines. I mean, they're talking about the stock and bond sales as well. They may end up raising something on the order of $2.5 billion, depending on what they end up selling the shares for. And Southwest is higher, and other airlines are doing just fine as well. In fact, they even have bigger gains at the moment. So it goes to show you that there is certainly a focus on cash at this point.
Bigger gains, although we should note after absolute carnage in their shares earlier this year. I mean, just to put that into perspective, but to put some numbers on what you're talking about, all this cash raising. Bank of America Global Research came out with a report today saying that companies have sold $230 billion of U.S. investment grade bonds so far this month, which comes within the striking distance of the all-time monthly record set last month of $261 billion. They had this comment that the Fed has solved the liquidity crisis and then some before even having bought a single bond. How much of what we're seeing in the market is simply central bank backstops? And we're going to just get probably more news of that tomorrow when we get the Fed statement.
Well, there's no doubt that's part of the issue. Of course, it's not like the central bank is providing a direct backstop to shares as they're doing with the investment grade corporate bonds and even some high yield securities. So, it's more by extension
Dave,
than anything else.
Hold on a second. Although, Dave, I will say the idea that companies, including the airline industry, can raise money in the debt markets to survive during this period of time easily because the Federal Reserve has said, not actually done it, but has said that they are willing to step in and buy credit, says a lot and actually speaks significantly to the optimism expressed in the shares, no?
Oh, sure. I mean, if you look at Southwest, even though, you got Moody's and S&P looking at their ratings to possibly cut them, they're investment grade at this point. So, you could say that they would be a direct beneficiary more so than, perhaps some of their peers when it comes to the Fed's plans and their actual purchases of corporate debt here.
Well, it is Tuesday on another lockdown where we are very grateful to all of our first responders. And so in the spirit of that, here is this dad joke, because that's what we're doing right now. What did the policeman say to his belly button?
I have no idea.
Dave?
Not a clue.
You're under a vest. Your response was gold, Paul.
Yeah. That's a 4, and I'm being.
Yeah, I'll agree with you. Oh, harsh. Well, Dave actually offered one up yesterday to me.
Okay.
Do you want to give it, Dave?
Yeah.
No, go ahead. I'd rather hear you tell it.
He's like, I don't want to hear my voice. No, this one was very good, and it sort of speaks to the reality that we're all facing right now. Did you know that pandas eat for an average of 12 hours a day? So do adults at home under quarantine. That's why it's called a pandemic.
Ah, there we go. I like that one.
Yeah, it's better.
Yeah, you had to work on that one.
And not just because I found it in a newsletter writer's email. It wasn't a personal line. We should spell that out.
To give credit.
Credit where credit's due. Well, if you want to submit yours, you can write to me at labramowitz@bloomberg.net or Lisa Abramowitz 1 on Twitter. Right now, let's take a look at what's going on in markets. We have seen gains across the board as people look ahead to the big tech earnings. Right now, let's head down to our 99.1 studios in Washington, D.C. Nathan Hager there with world and national headlines. Nathan.
Lisa, thank you. This message that many states may be hearing from the White House now when it comes to reopening their economies could be summed up as go your own way. White House did put out expanded guidance to give states a chance to expand their testing capacity, but even before that, Georgia's allowed restaurants and movie theaters to reopen. Texas Governor Greg Abbott plans to follow suit in his state on Friday. Houston, Texas Mayor Sylvester Turner hopes Abbott's right.
Many of the people who live in these communities, these are individuals who are serving the tables, and these are the people who are riding the bus, and what they are asking for is not necessarily when we are going to open. But Mayor, tell me, what are you going to do to keep us safe?
Moments ago, President Trump tweeted a vote of confidence in Abbott's move. Later this morning, the president meets with Florida Governor Ron DeSantis in the Oval Office. France just announced a plan to begin reopening its economy. Certain shops, small shops, will be allowed to open on May 11th. Restaurants and cafes might be allowed to reopen by the end of the month, but large events in France will still be canceled through September. In the UK, the government's urging people to keep staying at home. That country's government says the nationwide lockdown is helping to slow the coronavirus death rate. Bloomberg's Leanne Gerrans reports from London.
Scientists are drawing up options for easing movement restrictions, which are expected to be set out later this week. That's as the government plans safe ways to reboot the battered economy. Chancellor Rishi Sunak is mulling how to gradually unwind support for businesses. Chief Medical Officer Chris Whitty is warning the coming months are fraught with uncertainty. In London, I'm Leanne Gerrans, Bloomberg Radio.
And Treasury Secretary Stephen Mnuchin says states that didn't manage their budgets well before COVID-19 should not expect a federal bailout. He said that in a CNBC interview. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg.
Why can't you just go to some remote island and wait till all this is over?
The range of outcomes is so wide.
Because it's your job.
What do you think some of the structural changes might result?
Fortunately, it's our job too.
How's the value done in this market?
Paul Sweeney and Lisa Abramowitz.
It's very hard to make a forecast.
Bloomberg Markets.
This could be a lower for longer type of hit.
Weekday mornings at 10 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
You took the first step and quit smoking, but even former smokers may still be at risk for lung cancer. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know about a new low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early. It takes only 60 seconds and could save your life. You took the first step, now take the next. Visit SaveByTheScan.org for a simple quiz to see if you're eligible and talk to your doctor about screening. SaveByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Force Initiative and the Ad Council.
The market's in focus every business day. The P&L Podcast with Paul Sweeney and Lisa Abramowitz.
Are there some sectors that you want to have more or less exposure to?
The economic news seems to be getting worse and worse.
Analysis of the day's Wall Street action.
What's the thought on Apple here?
From Bloomberg Intelligence, Bloomberg Opinion, and influential newsmakers.
Ward McCarthy joins us right now.
P&L with Paul Sweeney and Lisa Abramowitz. Listen today on Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, or subscribe on Apple Podcasts.
Hi, I'm your host, Smokey Colbert, filling in for Smokey because after 75 years of...
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Turns out there's much more to say. Nearly 90% of wildfires are caused by us humans being careless, dumping our used barbecue coals willy-nilly. Guess the song was wrong. We did start the fire. That's why I respect Mother Nature and her trees, whether coniferous or new car scented. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise report.
Coming soon, Ricochet, the new action film written by, directed, and starring Euro Millions winner Timothy Barker, with music by Timothy Barker.
Tonight's Euro Millions jackpot is a massive £28 million. That's dream come true money. Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Play online or on the app. Estimated jackpot. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
The loungewear essentials that ease you into your comfort zone. The Fitbit that helps you step up your fitness goals. the yoga mat that turns your lounge into a studio. With a choice of ways to pay, you can enjoy being the best possible you. You can say yes when it matters most at very.co.uk. Goods and services provided by Shop Direct Home Shopping Limited. Credit provided by Shop Direct Finance Company Limited.
Dating can be tricky, especially when you can't meet face-to-face. So it's time to get creative. With the easy way to replace physical dates, Video Call from Bumble, the dating app where women make the first move. Here's Anna Williamson and Tom Reed-Wilson with some tips on connecting online.
It's a bit harder to flirt with limited body language, but nothing beats a smile and some eye contact to show them you're interested.
And have an activity plan for your date. This will help break the ice.
Download Bumble today.
Okay, people, I've got the daily checklist. Who today has eaten dinner for breakfast? Tick. Started a chore you'll never finish? Tick. Done a conference call in your pajamas? Tick. Here's another for your list. BritBox. Streaming the BBC, ITV, Channel 5 and now Channel 4. All in one place and ad-free. So add BritBox to your list and get a 30-day free trial of the biggest box of British box sets. Search BritBox free trial. Tick. Biggest compared to other SVOD providers. Auto-renews at $5.99 a month unless cancelled. T's and C's apply.
Typical Danny. Last night I was chilling with my girls, but ended up spilling my Chardonnay all over my fave lilac nightie when I saw the photo I was tagged in. State of my fake tan. But no worries, just one wash and my clothes will smell perf with Surf. Surf gives you long-lasting fragrance with natural essential oils. Find your fragrance in Surf's laundry range.
Introducing the new single, Impossible. From Central American rock and blues trio, Steady Rolling. Their epic story of love and loss continues. Download and stream the single, Impossible, from the band Steady Rolling, wherever good music lives.
Max is dreaming of riding a giant chameleon whilst fighting a clan of ninjas. But in reality, he's helping fight COVID-19 in his sleep. Like thousands of others, he's joined the Dream Team. By using the Dream Lab app, they're helping scientists speed up the search for potential treatments.
I'll fight you.
You go, Max. Search Vodafone Dream Lab and join the Dream Team tonight.
Dream Lab app is owned by Vodafone Foundation, an independent charity. Registration number 1089625. Full terms at vodafone.co.uk/dreamlab.
This is a message from the government to all essential workers. You're doing vital jobs to keep our country going, and you can now get tested for coronavirus. From health professionals to emergency services, from delivery drivers to grocery workers, from teachers to care workers. Tests are available for you and anyone in your household who has symptoms. For a full list of all essential workers eligible and how to get a test, go to gov.uk/coronavirus.
News 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Stocks are off opening highs, but still well up. Automakers and banks led the S&P higher, though gains did moderate mid-morning as France said large gatherings will be banned until September. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day here on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500's up 0.9%, up 26. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is up 1.1%, up 266, and the NASDAQ is up 0.2%, up 14. 10 years currently up 12.30 seconds. The yield 0.62%. West Texas Intermediate crude oil is up 6%. That story in a moment. It's at $13.56 a barrel now. COMEX gold's down 0.6% at $17.1260 an ounce. The dollar yen 106.72. The euro $1.850, and the British pound the $1.2451. As we indicated, oil did erase losses after earlier plunging close to $10 a barrel after a major index tracked by billions of dollars in funds bailed out of near-term contracts. As I say, once again, oil is now up 5.7% at $13.50 a barrel. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
You're listening to Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
The Federal Reserve is beginning a two-day meeting today that culminates with a statement from Fed Chair Jay Powell tomorrow, 2 p.m. New York time. We will be airing that when he takes comments, and people are going to be parsing it for any guidance going forward as to what the Fed will do. Ira Jersey joining us now, Chief U.S. Interest Rate Strategist for Bloomberg Intelligence. Ira, I want to start not with what we may expect from the Federal Reserve, but what they've already said and what that means in terms of the budget deficit. Right now, we are expected to have in the United States a federal deficit that might exceed $3.4 trillion at the end of this year. How much is the Fed doing to plug that gap?
Well, the Fed's doing a lot. I mean, the Fed is, they've already purchased well over $1 trillion of Treasury securities. So, in a way, they've already plugged a lot of that gap, about half of the additional deficit that was expected for this fiscal year. Now, remember, this fiscal year only goes to the end of September. So, those numbers you say, Lisa, are really almost 6-month numbers in many respects. Because
excuse me for the understatement.
Yeah.
Carry on.
So the Treasury Department is going to have to issue a whole lot of debt. And they've already issued quite a lot of Treasury bills, so what's called cash management bills. So these are kind of off-cycle, not normal short-term debt. But that will be extended into longer-term debt, and the Treasury Department will announce that next week. So this Wednesday we have the Fed meeting. Next Wednesday we have the refunding announcement, which usually is pretty boring, but I think this time will be, but we have to pay close attention to it because they're not only going to be announcing for the first time a 20-year bond, but also probably major increases across the rest of the Treasury curve as well.
All right, so Ira, just give us a sense of where the Fed's balance sheet is now and where you think it will be, let's say, a year from now.
Well, so a year from now it'll be well north of $10 trillion, we think. More than double from where it was. Certainly, new highs. But interestingly, a big part of that is you say where it is a year from now, but soon thereafter, assuming that we go back to work and things kind of normalize, a lot of the programs that they're putting in place now that are going to have rather large take-ups will naturally roll off over just a couple of years. Because when you think about things that like programs that are just starting to ramp up this week or next week, like the corporate purchase programs, those programs aren't buying debt that are any longer than 4 years, and because they're not, then that means that some of that debt's only going to be 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and as that rolls off, you'll see the Fed balance sheet shrink quite substantially. Now, will we get back to $5 trillion or $4 trillion? Probably not. We'll probably go to 7 or 8 trillion and probably find a steady state somewhere around there.
And currently, we're at about $6.5 trillion, just to put that into perspective of getting back down to $7 or $8 trillion eventually in the future. I want to talk a little bit about the issuance that we've seen so far, Ira. You put out some great decks on it for Bloomberg Intelligence, just looking at the amount of coupon issuance that you're expecting, and more importantly, that the bulk of the issuance so far from the U.S. government has been in the form of T-bills. This defies logic to me because you would imagine that the U.S. Treasury Department would want to lock in ultra-low financing costs for decades to come. Why haven't they?
Well, I think they will, and so the Treasury's mantra is to be regular and predictable, and so they can't just go out and say, hey, we're currently issuing $23 billion of 30-year notes. We're going to up that to $100 billion right away. They'll do that incrementally over time, and I think that's one of the reasons why next week and next Wednesday, every quarter they do this big meeting where they do what's called a refunding meeting, and the Treasury Department will announce that they're going to be increasing those other coupons quite substantially. So 10-year notes, like I said, they're going to be issuing for the first time a 20-year and then 30 years. I think that all of those will go up quite substantially over the next couple of quarters, but they'll do it incrementally to make sure that the market's not shocked by the amount that they're going to be issuing, because the worst thing for them is for them to have to basically make extra phone calls and say, hey, we didn't get enough bids and this auction's going to fail, so we need you to bid a little bit more. They don't want to see that. So to be regular and predictable, they'll say, we're going to be increasing every month $3 billion, $5 billion in these various coupons all across the curve.
Ira, just 30 seconds. Give us just an update of what's going on the short end of the curve, the repo market. It was such in the news several months ago, and I'm just wondering if that's kind of worked itself out now.
Well, this morning, the New York Federal Reserve received 0 bids at their overnight repo operation. So, so not only are things normal, but you actually have late in the day, in particular, and yesterday you even saw negative repo rates. So you actually had people willing to pay money to pay in order to lend their money into the repo market just to be able to take Treasury collateral. So the very front end overnight rates are very low. The Fed funds effective rate, which is the Fed's policy rate, is at 0.4. It's at 4 basis points right now. So we think that actually this Wednesday the Fed will actually increase the interest paid on excess reserves. So even though they want to keep interest rates low for a very long time, they don't want negative interest rates to be pervasive. So they're going to, just kind of tweak things just a little tiny bit to keep all of those rates just above 0.
Ira Jersey, thank you so much for joining us, as always, on Tuesday. Ira Jersey, Chief U.S. Interest Rate Strategist for Bloomberg Intelligence. I think one of my takeaways there, Lisa, from Ira is, a Fed balance sheet, north of $10 billion, and then the normal being maybe 7 or 8 billion. Yeah, trillion.
I will say, I just think about negative rates and how to explain that to a child. Someone said, take their cookie, take a bite, give it back to them, and say, thank you for doing business.
Exactly. So we'll have to see. But the Fed, we'll hear them from the Fed tomorrow. Jay Powell, chairman of the Federal Reserve, will be 2 p.m. Wall Street time. We'll have that for you as well. So lots to talk about. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. A strong open for stocks, the Dow gaining more than 200 points. The Federal Reserve begins its 2-day policy meeting in an environment of soaring unemployment. The central bank announces its decision tomorrow afternoon. The White House has come out with a new strategy to expand coronavirus testing. States were given new guidance on how to build testing capacity. Plus, retailers, including Walmart and CVS, said they'll open hundreds of new test sites. The goal is to speed up testing so states can reopen their economies. The Federal Reserve is expanding an emergency lending program to cover smaller cities and counties. Now, cities with as few as 250,000 people and counties of 500,000 can apply. And Disney is releasing the latest Star Wars film on its Disney Plus streaming service 2 months sooner than expected. The latest sign that the coronavirus is accelerating the shift toward home viewing. The Rise of Skywalker will be available on May 4th. Courtney Donahoe, Bloomberg Radio.
Melissa from Michigan. I work an extra part-time job serving lunch at my child's school, but I still can't afford to put food on our table.
Daniel from California. Choosing whether to pay the rent or pay to fix the car to get to work doesn't leave us with much at all. Now we can't even pay for meals.
Hunger is a story we can end. End it at feedingamerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies? Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers. The best of Bloomberg Business Weekend.
Dating can be tricky, especially when you can't meet face to face. So it's time to get creative with the easy way to replace physical dates, video call from Bumble, the dating app where women make the first move. Here's Anna Williamson and Tom Reed-Wilson with some tips on connecting online.
It's a bit harder to flirt with limited body language, but nothing beats a smile and some eye contact to show them you're interested.
And have an activity plan for your date. This will help break the ice.
Download Bumble today.
This is an important message from the government. For now, we must all still stay at home. It can be hard, but it's making a difference. So please keep going for the ones you love. Keep going for every key worker on the front line as they keep going for us. Keep going because together we will beat the virus. To all of you making sacrifices every day, thank you. Stay home, protect the NHS, save lives.
Okay, people, I've got the daily checklist. Who today has eaten dinner for breakfast? Tick. Started a chore you'll never finish? Tick. Done a conference call in your pajamas? Tick. Here's another for your list. BritBox. streaming the BBC, ITV, Channel 5 and now Channel 4, all in one place and ad-free. So add BritBox to your list and get a 30-day free trial of the biggest box of British box sets. Search BritBox free trial. Tick. Biggest compared to other SVOD providers. Auto-renews at $5.99 a month unless cancelled. T's and C's apply.
Picture in your mind a stylish Audi with striking LED headlights, sporty alloy wheels, and some of our most advanced features, including a 10-inch digital cockpit and smart assistant systems like lane departure warning. Picture what that Audi looks like. Now think smaller. The Audi A1. It's not a small car, it's a small Audi. Visit audi.co.uk. Audi. Vorsprung durch Technik.
Introducing the new single, Impossible. From Central American rock and blues trio, Steady Rolling.
It's not impossible.
Their epic story of love and loss continues. Download and stream the single, Impossible, from the band Steady Rolling, wherever good music lives.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks to National Lottery players, communities across the country are about to benefit from up to £300 million of funding.
Thank you. Thank you.
Money that will help support the most vulnerable in these exceptional times.
Thank you. Thank you.
Food banks, local health organisations, charities combating loneliness, and thousands of other community causes will all get vital resources.
Thank you. Thank you.
And it's all thanks to you, playing the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen.
Helen is dreaming of fighting a flock of 40-foot flamingos. But in reality, she's helping fight COVID-19 in her sleep. Like thousands of others, she's joined the Dream Team. By using the Dream Lab app, they're helping scientists speed up the search for potential treatments.
I'll fight you.
Keep fighting, Helen. Search Vodafone Dream Lab and join the Dream Team tonight.
Dreamlab app is owned by Vodafone Foundation, an independent charity. Registration number 1089625. Full terms at vodafone.co.uk/dreamlab.
Casting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Markets.
Coming up over the next half hour, could we see negative WTI crude prices in the near future? We will dive into that topic as well as some changes made to ETFs and indexes, plus a conversation with Jim Paulson, Chief Investment Strategist at the Luthold Group. Right now, let's get the numbers. Greg Jarrett has that for us with the Bloomberg Business Flash. Greg.
Well, it looks like we're headed for our third straight gain, Lisa, right now, at least, as governments contemplate reopening their economies and the earnings season gathered some steam. The dollar is weaker and oil bounces. This happened as the abrupt decision by S&P Global to tell their clients to sell their June West Texas Intermediate holdings unleashed another day of chaos in the global energy market. We check the numbers every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500's up 0.5%, up 14. The Dow's up 0.7%, up 165, well off earlier highs. NASDAQ is down 0.3% at down 24 right now. The 10-year is currently up 12.30 seconds, the yield 0.62%. West Texas Intermediate crude is up 4% at $13.29 a barrel, while COMEX gold's down 0.5% at $17.1470 an ounce. The dollar yen 106.82, the euros $1.851, and the British pound the $1.2440. Consumer confidence has sustained a near record drop. Confidence plummeted from a revised 118.8 to 86.9. Which isn't the worst drop of all time. That happened during the first oil crisis back in 1973. Now, that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
Bloomberg Opinion, informed perspectives, and expert data-driven commentary on breaking news.
It's 10:33 on Wall Street. Time to check in with Bloomberg Opinion. We're pleased to be joined by opinion columnist Dr. Ellen Wald. She's a president of Transversal Consulting, also a Bloomberg Opinion contributor. Dr. Wald, thank you so much for joining us. Boy, you know, what we're seeing in the oil market is just extraordinary. We had negative prices just a week ago. We had tremendous volatility so far this week, a little bit of a bid today. I wonder if you could just set the stage for us, Ellen, and just give us a sense of where you think the supply and demand dynamics are today for global crude.
The supply and dynamics for crude are not good. Looking at what's happening, and we've still got.
I think that's a fair assessment, by the way. not good. Carry on.
Not good. We've still got way too much oil production coming on the market right now, and not nearly enough demand, and that's resulted in a massive build in storage. And we're not just talking about storage of crude oil. We're talking about gasoline stocks are way up, diesel fuel, jet fuel, massive amounts of this stuff is piling up. And even though refineries are cutting their runs, now that's leading to even more buildup of crude oil. And so that's really the main issue here, is I think this imbalance in supply and demand, which was not helped, by the way, by Saudi Arabia, which increased its oil production to its maximum level of 12 million barrels per day in April. And at the beginning of April, it seemed like that might be okay, but really once economies around the world were clearly shutting down, they maintained that production when clearly there wasn't enough demand. So that kind of just piled on to all of the other issues.
So this complete imbalance has been manifested most significantly in the negative pricing in the May WTI contract that just rolled. We're seeing an exodus from the June contract as the biggest oil ETF in the United States amends its contracts, its provisions yet again in terms of what it is willing to buy. My question is, how long will this complete imbalance last? A lot of people putting faith that by July things will start to ease and people will start to use cars and fly around more. Do you think that optimism is misplaced?
Well, I think it's not a bad assessment. I would say it's optimistic, but I don't think it's too optimistic. I do think a lot will depend on the psychological effects of this lockdown and these quarantines, because even as states in the United States, we're seeing them start to lift quarantine restrictions and lockdown restrictions. The question really is, are people going to feel comfortable going out of their houses, going back to work, sending kids to school or camp? And that, I think, will really set the tone for whether we're going to see demand roaring back or kind of slowly trickling back. And that could really, that could spill over past the summer and then over into the fall and winter, even when demand is traditionally lower. So we could even compound the problem if we don't have strong summer demand by heading into winter with lower demand. On the other hand, we could see a massive surge in gasoline demand in the United States, for example, as if things get back to normal and people are psychologically ready to get back out there, but air travel's not back, we could see a huge surge in gasoline demand as people drive a lot more. So it really, I think, depends a lot on how comfortable people feel and also how comfortable they're made to feel by the authorities and medical professionals.
So, Ellen, how bad is it going to get for our friends in the U.S. shale patch?
It's already bad,
yeah.
And I think it's only going to get worse. It's very bad. Companies are shutting down, and the question I think now is not just, is it going to be bad for those in the upstream, but is it going to spill over into the midstream, into the pipeline, into the people who are doing the midstream business, and are we going to see it spilling into that area? Because we're seeing, we can expect more layoffs. I think we've already seen a lot, bankruptcies, but then the question is, does this spill into midstream, and do we see long-term damage to our midstream infrastructure and our ability to get that oil to where it needs to go? Because that has for many years been kind of the limiting factor, and we were just starting to get over that issue right when this hits.
Just real quick here, Ellen, I'm wondering what this means in terms of the swoon in oil prices for Saudi Arabia and any potential political threat, given how much of the nation's budget relies on crude.
I think that's an issue that cannot be ignored, particularly at this point, because crude oil, I mean, we have Brent barely above $20 a barrel, and at that level, Saudi Arabia is making just a few dollars in royalties off of every barrel of oil it pumps. And that's not good for the Saudi budget. And so far what we've seen is basically a complete dismissal of these issues. The Saudi government is choosing to rely on borrowing money. And that's not a bad idea. Saudi Arabia definitely has more room to borrow, but they're not, I think we're seeing them not really look at the long-term ramifications here. Dubai just announced that they're cutting their expenses, and so it's really unclear as to whether they're going to see a need to cut expenses. The country could be seeing some serious financial problems, which, as we know, can lead to political unrest.
Ellen Wald, thank you so much for being with us. Ellen Wald, president of Transversal Consulting and a Bloomberg opinion contributor. Right now, let's head down to our 99.1 studios in Washington, D.C. Nathan Hager there, covering all things world and national. Nathan.
And Washington, Lisa, the White House moments ago said President Trump is going to hold a news conference with Florida Governor Ron DeSantis in about an hour, 11:30 Wall Street time. That's right around the time New York Governor Andrew Cuomo holds his daily press briefing. The president and the governor are set to meet in the Oval Office a day after the Trump administration put out a new strategy to expand state coronavirus testing capacity. Bloomberg's Amy Morris has details.
The administration plans to provide enough tests to all 50 states to screen at least 2% of their residents, with a focus on elderly and minority populations. The new guidance shifts responsibility to states and the private sector. It was developed with the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and the Food and Drug Administration and was coupled with announcements by retailers including Walmart and CVS that they'd open hundreds of new sites to provide tests. Quest Diagnostics says it will double testing to 100,000 a day by the end of May. In Washington, I'm Amy Morris, Bloomberg Radio.
Even before this guidance came out, states have been going their own way on reopening their economies. Georgia Governor Brian Kemp has given the go-ahead to restaurants and movie theaters, but he says it's not a mandate.
I simply gave people the opportunity that literally were on the verge, many of them, of losing everything that they got. You know, these are tough decisions.
Other states like Michigan and California are extending stay-at-home orders. Ohio is holding the first near-completely vote-by-mail election today. Joe Biden's all but locked up the Democratic nomination. Today, the focus will be on the process. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce is coming out against calls for new regulations as states reopen. The nation's largest business group says companies shouldn't face fines if they have a sneeze guard out of place, an employee with the wrong mask, or two employees 5 feet 10 inches apart instead of the mandated 6 feet. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting.
Okay, people, I've got the daily checklist. Who today has eaten dinner for breakfast? Tick. Started a chore you'll never finish. Tick. Done a conference call in your pajamas. Tick. Here's another for your list. BritBox. Streaming the BBC, ITV, Channel 5, and now Channel 4. All in one place and ad-free. So add BritBox to your list and get a 30-day free trial of the biggest box of British box sets. Search BritBox free trial. Tick. Biggest compared to other SVOD providers. Auto renews at $5.99 a month unless cancelled. T's and C's apply.
Typical Danny. Imagine trying to unwind at a spa weekend and you wind up getting your mud pack all over your fave personalised dressing gown. But no worries, just one wash and my clothes will smell perf with Surf. Surf gives you long-lasting fragrance with natural essential oils. Find your fragrance in Surf's laundry range.
At Lloyds Bank, we're doing everything we can to protect you against fraud. Unfortunately, there are some who are using the coronavirus outbreak to try new scams. Well, don't be fooled. Lloyds Bank will never call, text or email and ask you to move money into another account or ask for your banking details. Also, if you're buying online, always check the seller is genuine and always use your card to pay as it protects your money. Lloyds Bank. Now more than ever, we're by your side.
You love TuneIn for live-breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Did you know that with TuneIn's local radio feature, you can stream live FM and AM stations broadcasting in your area? Discover local news, talk, and music stations. Navigate to the local radio section under Browse to listen locally on TuneIn.
Get your daily dose of NFL shop talk with these great podcasts on TuneIn. Start your morning off right with Around the NFL.
Injured, depleted roster into the playoffs, and I didn't think they belonged in the playoffs.
I think overall, though, it was a great divisional round weekend because you got the first one.
Run into the end zone with the Move the Sticks podcast.
We had a fun little Zoom cocktail hour last night.
Oh, yeah.
What a star-studded affair. Greg, you were there for the earlier part, but it really popped off a little later on. We had Zach Goldman.
And dive deep into the sidelines with the Peter King podcast.
On the occasion of his 50th birthday, come down and record a little bit of retrospective on the life and times of Brett Lorenzo Favre.
That sounds like a bestseller.
It sounds like a precursor to a funeral. That's what it is.
I wasn't thinking that.
Explore these and more hard-hitting NFL podcasts right here on TuneIn. Stay on top of everything happening in the pro wrestling universe with the body-slamming podcasts on TuneIn. For passionate recaps of the most recent SmackDown to a pro wrestler's perspective on life and culture at large, search sports and scroll down to the world of wrestling to listen.
To help make the most of your time at home, TuneIn is sharing our top activities for social distancing. Tip 3, have a game night. In fact, why not make it a game day? Whether you're quarantined with kids or roommates, nothing passes the time like a game of cards, Pictionary, charades, dominoes, or Never Have I Ever. If you've got the hardware, break out the video game console and enjoy hours of guilt-free gaming. For more indoor inspiration, search Listen From Home on TuneIn.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Stocks are well off opening highs, but still in the green as automakers and banks lead the way. The gains moderated mid-morning as data indicated U.S. consumer confidence crashed in April to the lowest since 2014. Stocks Europe 600 headed toward a 7-week high as all major national benchmarks advanced. Oil futures in New York slumped to about $10 a barrel before reversing course in what's being described as a volatile session. Treasuries edge higher.